Welcome back to Splice and Splatter, the film podcast presented by the Jean Cocteau Cinema in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where classic horror
meets Montagore.
We're your hosts. I'm Siena.
And I'm Al.
And
we're here.
We're back. It's happening.
We're recording on a Monday, which feels weird for us. It's a Monday for you guys. It's a Monday for us guys.
Yeah, that almost never happens.
Yeah. Don't think I'm a fan already.
Yeah, I'm struggling already.
Yeah, we both didn't sleep well.
Did not sleep well. I had very weird dreams. I was telling you beforehand.
Yeah.
And I had very weird feelings about the film that I'm covering. So it's
yeah. I'm glad that we're gonna end on a
weird note, you guys.
Yeah. Too many spoilers. Well, we're doing
what are
I'm
we
excited
covering?
because I'm doing I'm doing Final Destination, which comes out this week for everyone.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see it. I actually think I'm going to go into theaters and see it. I've never seen any of the other ones in theaters, so this might be my first, will be my first Final Destination in a cinema going experience. I'm very excited.
I have to admit, I was dreading this. I thought that I was gonna hate it. I had such a good time.
Did you? It's a ride.
It's a ride.
And
it's a well-executed ride. It's like just on a film level, I was very satisfied.
Okay, good.
And I was glad that I enjoyed one of our films.
Yeah. You're like, I couldn't have done both.
I was like,
Spoiler,
this would be too...
Siena. Feels.
I mean, this is the first time that I've posted a letterboxd review of the films on my personal account before we've covered it, because usually I hold off, but I was so filled with rage after watching It Follows that I couldn't contain myself.
I'm so intrigued. I'm going first, but I'm so intrigued because you kind of gave me not a spoiler, but you were like, I have feelings. I was like, save it, but I'm dying.
Yeah.
So it's been about a week, I think, since you told me that. So I'm kind of, because I watched it last night.
Oh, interesting.
I love this movie. I love It Follows. So I'm very intrigued. I'm actually really interested to hear your side.
I did my best to break down what didn't work for me and to bring in
constructive
feedback. Helped of all people by Quentin Tarantino. So that'll be my little tee up for my half. But I'm really glad that we're starting with yours. I watched it in the bubble bath last night and I had just such a nice
that feels
time.
like a Final Destination moment in itself. You were like, and I had a TV that was hooked up. I found it on VHS. Theo almost knocked it over.
There's some
I was blow drying my hair.
Yeah,
while
exactly.
I was in the bath.
It almost fell in. There's some weird, overly blue tinted water seeping out from the tub. All that good stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I knew it was gonna be. It was one of those things. I'm really excited to talk about it. It was one of those films going in again in 2000. I didn't know how much I would have about it. Mm-hmm. And also sometimes with franchise, I have to be really careful of pulling sources and making sure they're talking about the right actual film I'm talking about.
Well, especially because with this franchise, I realized even as I was looking it up just to find it to watch, the titles do not differentiate the films very much.
I think the fifth one's called The Final Destination.
Yeah, and apart from that, it's all just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically.
That's it. So. But yeah, I was coming in here being either you're gonna appreciate it for what it was, and I do want to talk about why I think this franchise is so amazing, and no one else I think why we had such a hard time finding something for it,
something to pair it with, which I do also. I'll shout out for all of the struggles that I had with my film. I'm really glad you suggested it, Warren. It was a really interesting pairing, and I think there's a lot. There's a lot to compare in terms of the way the narratives are constructed, I think.
I'm interested to hear what you have to say on that. I figured you were going second. You would have the background.
Honestly, watching Final Destination after It Follows helped me clarify a little bit of what didn't work about It Follows to me, because I think there are actually things that I felt like Final Destination did more successfully, where it felt like they were both... There are things about the way the story is shaped almost that feel similar because, as you said, it's this pursuit of inevitable death, you know, or pursuit by inevitable death.
And so wildly different.
Such wildly different executions.
Yeah. I was ready to convince you otherwise. The stuff that I found is really cool.
Oh, I'm stoked. This seems like one that there would be some really fun behind-the-scenes stories for, I could imagine.
Weird. Because this is the first one. It's a lot of how this came to be is what I brought in for this. Cool. So I'm sure there's a ton of those. I have a couple of production and like a couple of how they were done moments and kind of a little bit of those, but I really found the origin of this fascinating.
Oh, I'm so
which we know
excited.
this is what I love to talk about. Do you have a tidbit before we
I
get
do
in?
have a tidbit.
Do you want to wait till yours, or
Up
is it
to you? It's about the shell phone. So I feel like it's whether I think that can stand on its own.
Okay.
If you want it now.
Because
or-
I love that thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Everybody loves that.
Yeah.
I loved that
Where did
thing
we get
before having
one?
seen that movie.
Yeah,
So,
it's so
shall we start
good.
with the shell phone?
Yeah, let's start with the shell
great.
phone. I'm so intrigued by this. Yes, please.
I mean, I feel like it is one of the most iconic things to have come out of this film. Right?
It is also the most out of place thing that could ever exist in this movie.
And like to be reading Dostoevsky on your shell phone, like of all things.
I don't know who that character reminded me of. Oh wait, is that her? She was the one with the glasses, right? Why am I totally blanking?
I think so.
She reminds me of the girl in Trick or Treat who like goes down with the witch hat.
Oh, she
gives me like her,
is.
but now.
Yeah,
like,
she
grown
does
up.
have very similar energy.
Yeah. So it like that's my canon.
that the
That's
character
her.
in Trick or Treat definitely grows up to read Dostoevsky. Yeah,
So,
for sure.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm excited
so
to hear.
the shell phone. The internet longs for the shell phone. How did we get it? It's actually, I have a quote from, I believe this is from the production designer. It is a 60s shell compact, so like a makeup compact that they turned into an e-reader. I wanted modern things, but if you show a specific smartphone now, it dates it. It's too real for the movie. It would bother me anyway, so we made one up. And all of that is really just to create the effect of a dream, to place it outside of time, and just to make people wonder about what they are. Those are things that I think happen to us when we have a dream. Okay, that's actually a quote from the director, I believe. I should have attributed that, but I'm remembering now that that's from David Robert Mitchell. So it's the idea behind it is more about it being impossible to place in time, which is a lot of what you see with a lot of the production design, the costumes, the props of the movie as a whole, is this sort of no place, no time sensibility.
Yeah, totally.
And so taking something that's 50 years old at the time they're making the movie and placing something modern in it to create this kind of, I think that's part of why it's so iconic, is because it is so distinctly two different things, two different periods that you don't see coexisting. And so and it's interesting to me because I feel like it would be pretty easy to make that a real thing now. We have the technology.
I know. I'm like,
and people want it so badly.
I mean, they could charge us so much money.
Oh my God.
So
they would
much
make
money.
a killing.
Or like a really big one, and that's like, what do you call it? Like a Kindle?
Yes.
Yeah, like a big Kindle.
Like a giant clamshell Kindle.
Oh my God. That'd be so cool. Damn. I didn't even realize that makes sense, because I was like, why? How does it live in this? Yeah, it really is a timeless space. I didn't even think about. I'll tell you why when we get to yours. Why it's hard for me to not place the place.
I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, being in Detroit.
Yeah. I'm like, I know that. I know there. I know here.
I can't wait to hear more about that, because I'm really curious. I know.
I
I
did a little bit of
Detroit,
peeking,
but
yeah. So when you get to that, we'll talk about it. But it's so I think for me having the shell phone, I just found it like mysterious more than I think that makes sense, because I have a hard time separating those things.
Warren, excuse us.
It scared me. We all have allergies in this place. I said
true.
Summer snow is here. We have the cottonwoods raining down on us, which it really did snow here for us not that long ago. Longer now that you guys are listening, but so. I kind of have a tidbit.
Amazing. Tee us up.
Yeah. So one of them actually Trav pointed out when we watched it. Alex, so Devon Sawa's character, he actually has a John Waters Pecker movie poster. And I was like, that's so funny. I just did Serial Mom.
And I talked about how Pecker was one of the John Waters movies that I watched most recently on the episode. And so as soon as the movie started, we get to the first scene, and I was like, are you kidding me?
That's so funny. Yeah.
I'm so glad you saw it. And it's a really interesting choice, because it's... I think the main character, I think you'd like it. I think the main character in Pecker has some similarities to Devon Sawa's character, I would say. So
yeah, I got to go down the John Waters rabbit hole.
The John Waters glory hole.
Yeah, truly. Oh my God, I'm not going to be witty enough for this episode today if we keep throwing things like that. Another little like kind of weird our world connection. There was talks about setting Final Destination in medieval times at some point, a la Game of Thrones.
I would love that.
I almost feel like
amazing.
they need to like Army of Darkness, like
yes,
I feel
transport
like
the narrative. I feel like they could totally pull that off in this series.
Yeah,
the rules of this world, I think, support that.
Yeah. The reason why they didn't is they really wanted to ground it in everyday, real things, like scenarios that you could put yourself in. They thought that was really going to be more effective than kind of launching with that. Although I feel like they're far enough in the franchise
That's what I was thinking. I think
that they could do a one-off.
Yeah, I think you could have it be a spin-off.
Yeah.
Because it has such a, like, medieval torture vibe to it.
I know.
That it seems like I
would open my book and be like, which one are they gonna do?
Yeah.
But I thought that was so funny.
I want to see their version of Iron Maidens, you know? Like that type of stuff.
Truly. I'm like, I have all my favorite torture methods and I would love to see them do. Which we'll get to in another time.
Yes.
It also, so not only was like that kind of a concept they threw around, there was also going to be a completely different title for you know, which was just one film at the time. Obviously it's a franchise now, so I think on like so many levels this wouldn't have worked. They originally, so you kind of see like the number 180 pop in. It was the flight number. So it's kind of like this through line throughout the film. It's one of those things that I don't care to pay the most attention to. It doesn't really matter to me.
Didn't register to me. But...
Yeah, they have like the shot with the clock and they kind of mention it a bunch. They wanted to call it Flight 180, which could you imagine they couldn't have franchised this?
Title.
Flight 180. They agreed that was terrible. It wouldn't have had longevity because that's the only concept for the first one. They decided not to, though, not because they thought it was a terrible title. They were worried people were going to get confused with movies like 1997's Air Force One or 1997's Con Air. So they were like, which are like, I don't know the first one, but the other one I know is Nicolas Cage film. So they were like, that's why we can't do it. It's that these came out earlier, and I was like, okay, well, good choice regardless.
Yeah. Well, and it also just feels like an odd decision because the flight is really just what kicks the narrative off. Yeah, it's the catalyst. It's not.
And again, it wouldn't have been a franchise. Like,
right.
Would they each had? You can't franchise that. I don't think that was their intent when they started, though. So
that makes sense.
We have a couple taglines for this.
Oh, I bet they're good.
Yeah, they're pretty good. I feel like everyone kind of knows them too. So we have no accidents, no coincidences, no escapes. You can't cheat death. I wish they would have stopped after the 3.
Yeah, just 3. Rule of threes, guys.
Rule of threes. Death is coming. She's coming. She's serving.
Yeah, that sounds very cunty.
This one's cunty. Death doesn't take no for an answer.
No, she doesn't.
She's coming, bitch. She's coming. And then, can you cheat death? So those are it. I feel like everyone kind of knows them.
Like a terrible casino slogan almost.
Yeah. So they're fine.
Okay, not as good as I expected. But
they're fine.
They feel on brand for the movie. You know?
Again, it's like we know it now, and it lives so in its own sphere of horror that I think if we were to go back, we'd have better things. It's a hard movie to sum up because it's just like, want death? You know what I mean? Got death? That actually would have been great.
That's a great tagline. Are you kidding me? Final Destination.
Got death? Very timely. With the got milk campaign.
Yep. Oh my god.
Trying
that
to force feed fucking dairy to us. So we have
hire Al, everybody.
Honestly, I should write. Is there like strictly a job in Hollywood where I could write taglines for a living?
Okay, but genuinely, I need help with mine.
I will happily. Please let me watch what you have.
Please.
Oh my god, I would love to. Give me a chance.
Desperate.
Give me a shot. Give me a shot, coach. Tag me in.
You should see the sweat pouring down my face anytime people ask me my tagline. I'm like, well, we're not going to talk about it.
At least read it to me and I'll let you know. Like,
fantastic.
You know? I'll be honest.
No, I know it's bad. It's.
I have opinions.
Like 2 sentences long. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah, I know. Come Al. I need help.
Have you listened to this podcast?
I know. Anyway, that's a tangent. Sorry, everybody.
We should just poll at all of you. Actually, you should all let us know. So we're going to get into like, I have lots of notes on like the creators and writer-director. So we have writer-director James Wong. He was the producer for 61 episodes of The X-Files.
This is one of the only things I know about this.
Oh, funny.
From like before having watched it is I know it because it was something that I found out while I was trying to find things to pair it with was that it's based on an X-Files
Oh, and
script.
we will get, we'll talk about that. I
hope
the
I'm not
plot.
stealing too much. Oh, cool.
No, because I'm going to tell the plot
Fuck
of it, which I didn't know. I think that was like, that's kind of floating around information that it was an episode. It like comes up on all the trivia pages and stuff too.
Yeah.
But I dug a little deeper into that.
Amazing.
Because it's really interesting. So 61 episodes of the X-Files. He wrote 17 of those. He did 102 episodes of American Horror Story, and he wrote 14. He did the 2000s Willard. He did Final Destination 3. Producer for all these, as well as producing the 2006 Black Christmas, which was atrocious. I'm sorry, nobody watched it. And then he was an executive consultant, and I didn't know this existed, on a 2014 Rosemary's Baby miniseries.
Oh,
I don't know if
haven't
that's
watched
good
it
or not.
I remember seeing ads for it.
Yeah.
But...
So, did that, and then pretty sure this was his feature film directorial debut.
Oh,
too.
Wow, so, what a way to kick off.
Yes. We're gonna get into the other writers / one of the creators, like who's really, he's like the godfather of.
I saw there's a lot of different, like, I think I saw 3 screenwriters and 1 story by.
Yeah. So story by is gonna be Jeffrey Riddick when we get to him. They kind of, we'll talk about how they kind of all came up, and there's very much, but Jeffrey Riddick is the man that I'm probably going to talk the most about on this, which is weird because normally it's the director.
Yeah. Very TV land.
Yes. Yeah. We have Glenn Morgan as one of the other accredited writers. Like you said, there's story by, and then there's like screenplay. He was a producer on 67 episodes of the X-Files, so they all came up together with the X-Files, and then he wrote 20 of those. He's also a producer and was a screenwriter on Willard. Amazing. And the 2006 Black Christmas. Amazing. And Final Destination 3. If this is giving you insight, they've worked together on a lot of things. And then he also produced 20 episodes of the 2019 and 2020 Twilight Zone, and then he wrote 4 of those. So they kind of all have this like producer. I think they've directed a couple like of episodes here and there, and then written stuff, and they've all kind of come up together and have continued to work together, which I think is really cool.
Love to see it. And
then Jeffrey Riddick. So I love this man for so many reasons. He's so cool. We absolutely have to tag him on all the things we do.
Yes.
And I just think I kind of love what he's had to say. Again, he's kind of my through line and everything. So he is credited as like the godfather of Final Destination. He's a creator of Final Destination. So he's the one.
He's the guy.
Yeah, he's the guy.
He's the destination.
He is the destination. He's the final destination. So I said, like, apart from creating one of the most fun franchises, I think, even over Scream, I think it's just more of a ride.
Ooh, yeah.
I think Scream's, there's more meat.
Yeah.
But I think as far as just straight up fucking fun, and everything is just, how do we do the most exciting kills?
It really is constructed like a roller coaster. Yeah. And it's very like, no plot, just kills.
Yeah, truly. Yeah. Death is coming. The end. That's all you need to know. When's the next kill? He was also an executive producer on Final Destination 2, 2016's Dead Awake, and then 2023's Till Death Do Us Part, which is a movie I really want to watch.
I feel like I've seen that come up on our Letterboxd recommendation.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like this girl goes to get I want to say she's like on her honeymoon or something like that, and I think all the whole groomsmen want to like kill her, but then she like switches it up on them. It looks really good. He also, again, like I said, he was kind of, you see him credited for story and characters on all the Final Destinations, but he doesn't really have a ton to do with them from what I've read. This was kind of like this was his Final Destination, like you said. And then I also found out he wrote the 2001's Return to Cabin by the Lake, which is Judd Nelson. You cannot find it, and you cannot stream the first, there's 2 of them. You can't find them anywhere. There's like you can buy a box set for like $100 on eBay. Wow. I want to cover them so bad, but then I feel like no one's gonna be able to watch. But they're some of my favorite like summer movies that I watched as a kid. They're so fucked up. Judd Nelson's terrifying, but he's so hot.
That sounds amazing.
He's so hot. So a little bit about, we're going to give some Jeffrey Riddick lore. So he first kind of had his like film connection around age 14, which I think like a lot of us, we kind of latch on to these things. So age 14. So he was a huge fan of Nightmare on Elm Street. So much so that he wrote his very own prequel to Nightmare on Elm Street and sent it off.
Oh my God, I
to
love
be like
that.
a spec script for a film. So he sent it to the president of New Line Cinema, who at the time was Bob Shea. Bob immediately returned the material and was like, absolutely not. This is atrocious. And so Jeffrey received it back, and he like sent it again with a letter, basically saying like, I don't know. They said like aggressive letter, so I can imagine like a 14-year-old being like, "I am a filmmaker. How dare
God,
you?"
I
And
love
so he
that.
sent it back, and Bob loved that he did that. I don't think
That's so funny.
my impression is he probably didn't realize it was a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And so when the kid sent it back, or when the kid, when he
does
was a
something
kid,
very 14-year-old.
yeah,
He's just
"Fuck you,
entertained
you should
by
read
it.
this."
Yeah.
And so they actually had stayed in touch for a while, like him,
Wow.
Bob's assistant, and him
That's adorable.
stayed in contact all the way up to the point where when Jeffrey was older, he attended the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York at 19. And when he graduated, so like at that time he wanted to be an actor, too, which I think I touched on, but I'm not sure. That when he graduated, Bob then hired him as an intern and then a job. And so he was actually there for 11 years at New Line Cinema with them. And I'm just like, setting yourself up for the future.
That's so cute. Well,
Yeah.
this is a New Line Cinema production, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yes, it is. Yes, it
Okay,
is. Yes,
great.
it is. We
Fantastic.
talk about it. I was like, wait, let me think. We talk about it. So we also have our composer, Shirley Walker. Okay. I was like, I know you know her. I'm not sure if anyone else knows her name. So she did Escape from LA. Obviously, all the Final Destination franchise films. She did 1995's Batman Forever. She did Disney animated Fox and the Hound, which she made us all weep. She also did, she was a conductor for A Goofy Movie, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Incredible.
She did the 1990s Ninja Turtles movie that we're going to be playing
Oh,
at the
yeah.
cinema.
Look at that.
And her first job in Hollywood was fucking Apocalypse Now. I'm like, what a fucking way. She's since passed, so RIP, this icon. But again, like the chance to shout a female
That's so
composer, I was like,
cool.
that's cool.
Yeah,
I
we
didn't
have
realize
that
she's
so rarely.
fucking everything. She is in
Man.
everything. We are gonna get into the very long list of who this is starring. Is this
Quite
the
an
second
ensemble cast.
Yeah. Is this the second Devon Sawa now?
It is after Idle Hands. Yeah.
Okay.
Which, of course, now it's... You've seen photos from my film. The hairdressers on my film very much did a Devon Sawa on one of my characters that, like,
absolutely.
I did not fully appreciate at the time.
Oh, yeah, because this was him, like... I remember him in this franchise. It was him just slowly... I feel like this older Devon Sawa, I feel like he was so iconic younger, which is, like, a weird
With the
thing.
floppier hair. Yeah.
Little butt cut, man.
Yeah. So that's floppy here.
Yeah. So... Oh, yeah. So I have a quote from Glenn Morgan. Again, these three creators, like the director, Glenn, and then Jeffrey, they all had very much their hands in stuff. They seemed like they kind of worked as a pod. So they were all part of everything as I was reading through. I found a ton of interviews with them all. It was very hard not to just keep quoting everybody. So I tried to cut back. But to finding the ensemble cast, we have Glenn Morgan, who said, quote, "One of the most important things we were looking for in casting was the actor's ability to play the subtleties, the little things that the character doesn't say or do that create the edge, these things that get under your skin and spook you." So that was kind of what they were looking for. Jeffrey Riddick originally, which, like, this blew my mind because the film then came out in 2002. He wanted to cast Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst, which in 2002 went on to lead in Spider-Man.
That's so funny.
And I'm like, could you imagine? And I don't know if rumors were swirling about them or it's just like those were like the hot actors at the time. But I feel like really though, and like, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe this is my perception, but I feel like when they got into Spider-Man together, that's really what launched them as like...
think so. Like, I know Kirsten Dunst had been in Virgin Suicides at that point, but that's like an indie movie, you know?
I don't think people were like, oh my god, Sofia Coppola.
Right.
Like, we were,
but it's not on the level of like Spider-Man.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting that, you know, this film came out in 2000, that one came out in 2002. So I'm wondering when they were cast, like how long that production took for that to, because that was a big movie.
Yeah. I would assume that it was...
I can't even imagine what this would be Also, like, if we wouldn't have had them as...
Totally different film timeline. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like that would... The butterfly effect that,
Yeah.
that casting would
It would
have
have
had.
been huge.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of interesting that initially those were the leads that they wanted. Obviously, we get Devon Sawa, who is perfect.
Yeah,
We know him
great
from
casting.
Idle Hands, Casper, the new Chucky series.
And somehow looks even younger here than he did in Idle Hands. To me.
Yeah.
How did they do that?
Yeah, he was a little more... Oh, when did Idle Hands come out?
I think Idle Hands is
97?
94?
No. Okay, everyone's shaking their head.
2000? Idle Hands
Oh,
is from
were they
2000?
the same time?
99 or 2000.
Oh, wow, I was
We
way
don't remember
off.
anything.
Yeah.
I never
have
remember
zero
the dates
idea.
of stuff. That's funny you say that. Completely different characters.
Yeah.
Though. Like one's very, one's fumbly stoner, and the other
True.
one like is trying to fucking save everybody.
Yeah.
You think the stress? We'll get to him, but we have Allie Larder as Clear Rivers, which
What a name.
what
What a name.
so. She was actually named after Glenn Morgan and James Wong's assistant. The Rivers surname actually came from a family relation from one of the crew, so it was like a amalgamation. And we'll get to the characters' names after we read through everyone. I think it's really cool. Initially, I said the only thing I kind of know her from is she's in Legally Blonde, and that's always what I think of her.
Yep.
Everything else, I was like, eh.
Yeah, that's... I
she's
knew
broke.
I was recognizing her face from something, and
Yeah.
it took about a half hour in before I placed it as Legally Blonde.
Yeah, she's such a wildly different character in that.
Yeah.
Jessica Biel was initially wanted for this role, which I think would have
Interesting.
worked
Very-
fine.
Am I remembering correctly that she was also in Idle Hands? No, I'm insane.
Jessica Biel.
Incorrect.
Yeah,
Incorrect, Sienna.
There was like a time where I don't think we're doing great today. I thought you were gonna be the good
Guys,
one.
I'm falling apart.
I was like so prepared for my notes. You
Oh, great.
I was so prepared, and then just lack of sleep last night pummeled me. Spent all day out in the sun enjoying like a Sunday fun day, and I feel like I'm paying for it.
Amazing.
At 10 a.m. on a Monday.
In fairness to me, Idle Hands was the one movie of the entire podcast that, because that was on our 420 episode and it was the one I did not cover, I was stoned for that
yeah,
watch.
you were.
So-
You were stoned
So
watching
my
that.
memory of that, a little
That was
bit
Jessica
shaky.
Alba.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Jessica's, they all blend together.
You've seen one, you've seen one.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry, Jessica's.
A little like callback to an older episode. The cabin that we see Clear at was in a film that I've covered before.
Oh,
you take a
Cabin
guess?
Fever?
No. Lake Placid.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that cool?
That's so cool.
I was like, holy shit. I really had to
Aw.
look. I wonder if we can like find like a little
A
kinda
side-by-side?
Yeah,
Oh, that'd
but
be-
I double checked
love that.
and it checked out, I think. We have Kristen Cloak as Valerie. She was in Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird, and then she also worked on The Black Christmas and Willard. Again, there's like a lot of pullover.
Interesting.
We have Sean William Scott as Billy. I feel like he was one of the bigger names from this, so he'd just come off American Pie movies. And so who was it that said it? Producer Craig Perry, who we'll talk about, he actually told Jeffrey Riddick, like, hey, this guy's gonna be up and coming, like you should really cast him in your film.
Smart.
And then I just watched him most recently in Righteous Gemstones, the Danny
Oh,
McBride series.
yeah.
And he's so good, he's so creepy.
Amazing.
He's aged beautifully, by the way. There's some
Wow.
actors that it's weird to see them, like
Some
Devon
people.
Sawa. It's nice to see him, these childhood or like teen actors that I grew up with. He's amazing in that. So we have Amanda Detmer as Terry. She was in Saving Silverman and Drop Dead Gorgeous, so that's where I know her from. And she was kind of known, she's the blonde, like curly haired one.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like she was kind of a character actor in all these teen movies, but I don't feel like she ever like
Made it, to the
leading
the
Yeah,
mainstream.
she's a little character actor, but I think she's great in this. We have Brendan Furr as George. He was in 61 episodes of the show Roswell, which was shot here in New
Oh,
Mexico.
love
So it was fun to
that.
see a little connection. We have Kerr Smith as Carter. He was Jack in Dawson's Creek. I'm not sure if you watched it.
I did
but-
not, but I know
Recognize
enough
the
to know how
face?
important that
Yeah,
is.
yeah. He's a queer character on Dawson's Creek.
Aw.
And then he's also in Riverdale, Charmed, and then 2009 Bloody Valentine. So he's in a bunch of like
Ah,
horror
It's a horror
things.
king.
And then we have Tony Todd as Bludworth. I know.
Bloodworth?
Bloodworth.
Oh,
I think they say it once
I completely
in
missed
there.
that.
And there's a lot of speculation online about him being like the personification of death. Which he is in interviews, and the creators are like, that is not it. It's fun,
Yeah.
but that is not correct.
It very much was like, it feels like they're wanting you to think that might be the case,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's the intent of the movie.
It is not at all. And
Great.
we'll get into death a little bit in this too, of like what they intended with that. So he's not, but that's what people always like to say. So
it felt more to me like he's like Death's Renfield. Like,
Ooh,
you know, like
yeah.
he's like Death's assistant.
Yeah, he just is kind of like, or just has like a little deal with death.
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
Like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
We
I'll just
walk
like
alongside each other.
drain my rats dry over here. You know, he's Death's Renfield.
Yeah, for sure. He's, I know I mentioned it to you, but in Bloodlines, it's his final screen debut. So, yeah, it'll be weird to watch that. I feel like knowing that, because you've really turned me into a huge Tony Todd fan.
I adore that man. Yeah. He is so, not just his talent and his presence on screen, but just him as a person. He was such a good human being.
I gotta see some interviews with him. I gotta dig in a little bit deeper, especially after that. Go down a rabbit hole. Oh. So his character was kind of important. So when it comes to like the casting of this film, I think we all will note how white it is.
Quite white.
Yeah. So...
both our films quite white.
Oh my god, yeah, yours was really white too.
That's the spoiler alert. That's something that I have some thoughts about.
Yeah,
but,
I can talk about this.
Love.
So, Jeffrey Riddick actually talks openly about the lack of diversity. He is a black man.
Cool.
I'm assuming not assuming he's black, but like I don't know if he has any other mix, but he's a black man. And so he talks about the lack of diversity, and he really wanted to push for more diversity when they were casting.
No.
Yeah, so he was very upset about this. So he said in an interview, quote, "One of the conversations we had early on was like, just remember that this is set in New York, which is where it was originally set. I don't think that's where it goes. Which is one of the most diverse cities in the world. So let's make sure we have some diversity in the cast." And they were like, "Oh, we will." And then he said it wasn't anyone but white people. So he was very upset that the studio or whoever was in charge of making those final decisions, that was not how it went.
This is like that part of like the 90s, early 2000s where like diversity to Hollywood meant like a white girl with brown hair. Like,
yeah, or like curly hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Look at her.
She's not blonde.
Ethnically diverse. With her brown curly hair. It's just a wave.
Yep.
It's just crimps.
Yeah.
It's not even natural. Yeah, so he was like pissy, and I do not like this last part. I'm happy we got Tony Todd, but I don't like the way we got Tony Todd. So, and I think there's more articles about this, so it's just like a gist of it. I have so many sources, but so New Line chief Bob Shea at the time, he said he like wanted to make amends with Jeffrey about this. I know.
So you cast one black person as like the closest thing to a personification of death that you have in the movie?
Yeah. So I think they were trying to like throw Jeffrey a bone. I guess Jeffrey said like he called me up and said that they had got Tony Todd, and I flipped out. He's an icon, such a talented, serious actor. But the fact that they like tried to like, here's one black guy for your film. Are you happy now? We got you. Like they clearly went after someone that they knew Riddick would be like so stoked about.
That it's which like it's amazing that they got Tony Todd.
Incredible.
But
he's through like the through line through all.
Which love that, but like he only is in one scene in this, and so like
he's in more in the second one.
Okay, that's good.
But yeah, so I mean the cast get more diverse, but then it's just like throughout the franchise. But the fact I just don't like how they were like, here, can you shut up now? That is really what I'm hearing.
Gross.
Yeah. So again,
love Tony Todd.
Yeah.
Don't love that.
Yeah. So yes, it's a white film. Fortunately for all of us. But to like on the flip side, I'm going to make up with it with some fun horror name.
The names
Did you get
in
the
this
names?
film,
I'm like, how many
gagged.
Did you pick out?
Okay, I
everybody.
caught Murnau.
Yep.
I caught Shrek, Max Shrek.
Yep.
I caught Val Luton.
Yep.
I'm sure there were a whole bunch more though.
Yeah. So you named a couple. We have Terry Chaney. After Lon Chaney, Phantom of the Opera. We have Todd. Did you say Wagner?
I didn't say, but oh, Browning. Because we have Browning and we have a Todd, and
Freaks
that's Todd
and Dracula.
Browning. Yep.
Yep. So we have that. We have Todd. Todd Wagner was from Wolfman. We have Blake Dreyer as from
Carl
Vampire.
Theodore Dreyer. Yep.
We have Howard Siegel, who was Don Siegel reference. Obviously, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I covered that one, so I thought that was really fun for me. We have Billy Hitchcock. Yeah. So there's but everyone was named after a black and white horror. That. Yeah.
Valerie Luton really killed me.
It's so funny because I tried to pay attention, but I think I was just like, I have watched this movie so many times. I just put it on when I was doing stuff. But I couldn't believe, it's literally almost every single person in this.
Chock full. Which was I was won over from the moment that the French teacher was named Larry Murnau. Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm in. Locked in.
So that's why I was like, I knew I would win you over if you didn't like this film. I'm like, there's so many horror nerd things about this that you're really going to like.
It was so clearly made by people who just love the same shit that you and I love and are just it felt like there was so much just earnest nerdery not taking itself seriously in a way that I really loved.
Yeah, no. I'm hoping it was less goofy than you thought too. It actually kind of walks this really interesting line of it is goofy, but the stakes are so high that
there's can also only be... I don't know how much of it was because I just did a Donnie Darko rewatch, but there was an energy to it that reminded me of that same kind of the specific kind of teenage angst of the whole world ending is on my shoulders kind of feeling that I think it really captures quite nicely in some ways.
Oh my god, I love hearing this from you. I was panicked of what you were going to say.
I had a great time. I really was not looking forward to it. Totally won me over from 5 minutes in.
It's so good. Yeah. We're going to talk about the script, which this is my favorite part of kind of figuring out how they came to be. Like you said, it kind of came from the script for the X-Files originally. So Jeffrey Riddick said, quote, I was actually flying home. So we're starting kind of from the base. So the idea of this story. So he said, I was flying home to Kentucky and I read a story about a woman who was on vacation and her mom called her and said, don't take the flight tomorrow. I have a really bad feeling about it. So coming straight from real life, which there's some bad to this at some point we'll get to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So she switched flights on the plane that she would have been on, and that flight had crashed. And so he kind of thought that was creepy, and it was like, what if you were supposed to die on this flight? So he kind of took that from a real thing that he read, and just kind of gave that question to kind of fill out the script. It was, like you said, written as a spec script for the X-Files in order to get a TV agent. So that was kind of why he wrote it. He ended up getting an agent, but instead of submitting the script to the X-Files to actually shoot for a show, he listened to his coworker's suggestion and actually submitted it to New Line Cinema for a feature film. So I love that he was like, nope, I got what I needed. I'm going to go this route and try and make it a bigger thing.
Well, yeah, and it gave it so much more room to expand than it would have had otherwise.
Yeah, I can't imagine. It's stuff like that. I wonder if it became an episode, if it would have spun off into a film eventually, too.
Well, and oh my gosh, this is so interesting because as you're saying this, it's making me realize I think It Follows would have worked better for me as an episode. I think had it been
a little bit shorter,
an hour-long Black Mirror episode, I think it would have really worked a lot better for me.
I feel that.
We'll come back around to
that. There was a lot of room. So Jeffrey recalls how it was to play out with the X-Files. He said, quote, it was going to be Scully's brother. It was supposed to be Scully's brother Charles who had the premonition, and so he would have gotten off the plane, and a few other people would have kind of followed him, and they would start kind of dying, and Charles would black out every time there was a murder. So he was kind of a suspect in this.
Very Candyman.
Yeah. So that was kind of how it was supposed to play. And then he continues and says, the twist at the end was that the sheriff who had been investigating alongside Mulder and Scully the whole time had actually been shot and flatlined at the same time of the plane crash. And so death brought him back to kill off all the survivors, including Charles. So he kind of had this
that's
deal
fun.
with the devil kind of thing,
fun.
which so I feel like I always heard it rumored it kind of brought back that spark, and then I didn't realize that we actually had what the episode would be.
That's
so
really cool. I love that you brought that in.
Yeah, I love that he pivoted. And so I love that you asked me, was it New Line Cinema? Yeah, I talk about them the whole time. I don't know how I forgot. So New Line Cinema bought the treatment and then hired Jeffrey to write it, the original draft for it of the script. And then that featured death as this, right from the beginning, it featured death as this unforeseen force, but had the survivors of the crash as adults. So that was what it was supposed to be. New Line had wanted to make the change to teenagers because they saw the success of Scream, and so they were like, you know, that was for the TV, we could do this for film. We're seeing, you know, the box office numbers for this, so they resubmitted it as teens, and then they included, that's when they brought on James Wong and Glenn Morgan in this. And then both of them were immediately on board to do the project. So before Jeffrey was even brought in, it was just supposed to be James and Glenn. Kind of like one of the two were supposed to direct it. Obviously James went along, but the three of them just seemed, I'm so curious how much influence they had in directing, because I just can't imagine they were like, yep, nope, like,
yeah, pass this off completely to James, not gonna have my hands in it. I feel like they directed,
like the three of them directed.
Well, and it seems like they worked together on so many projects that, like,
yeah, they produced, they wrote, I think, like I said, I didn't bring it in, I think they directed on some of the X-Files episodes as well. But they kind of said, like, the three of them, they wanted to do for planes, for air travel, what Jaws did for like sharks and going to the beach.
Oh no, that's
and I do feel like they did.
They did, but that's such a terrible
for, like,
thing to say after, like, right before.
Oh yeah, I know, 2000.
Yeah.
We got eerily close to everything. So they did it. Also, horrific events happened that also did that for us.
Yeah.
So we're good. Thank fuck it didn't come out the same year.
This movie would have been ruined had it come out
we would have never seen it.
Later.
We would have never seen it.
It would have been shelved. Yeah.
Jinx. So Jeffrey goes on to talk about, like, from the start, they were in agreement that they did not want to make this a slasher movie. I think they saw that it was being done, even though it was successful, that's not the path that they wanted to choose. And they were really excited to, quote, make the world at large in service of death, our antagonist, everyday objects and occurrences then take on this ominous proportions, and it becomes less about whether or not our characters are going to die and more about how they are going to die and how they can delay their deaths. The entertainment value is in the ride, not the outcome. And by placing the premise of the films on the inevitability of death, we play a certain philosophical note. So I think they were so genius in carving out, like, for me, this franchise, again, we had such a hard time pairing it because there is nothing that has, even It Follows. Yeah. It's not the same. Right. That's not a ride.
No, it's not.
That is for me, that's so stressful. But it's not, like, fun to watch in that journey in the same way. Like, okay, I know they're going to die. That's fine. But, like, how is it going to be? And yours is just like, they don't show any of that.
Right.
That's not the point.
How you die is really not the point of It Follows. It's the lead up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of, like, the visual representation of death or lack thereof was extremely intentional and extremely thought out so that it could reach a large audience, which I love that they didn't kind of go for the obvious. They said they specifically and deliberately did not want to have it attached to any religion. So they that's why they didn't want to have something physical for people to touch. Smart. It was this shadow thing, this looming thing. It really could be whatever you wanted, no matter what you believed. So, like, someone like me who doesn't believe in anything
can still
but it's still
get down with it.
Yeah. You know, I always think, like, oh my god, if I tripped on this and then fell, I'm like, I would be Final Destination this way. So Jeffrey Riddick said they had to fight, though, really hard for this concept, because the studio obviously wanted to show death, because they're like, how do we package this thing that we can't see?
Right.
Which I do understand.
It's a horror movie, what's your horror villain?
Yeah. Which, like, they kind of take back, because they said when this film came out, they were like, fuck, we should have done something because we couldn't capitalize on toys and sales of things. So they were like, damn it, like, maybe we missed something a little bit. I don't think they missed it all.
No.
Yeah. So Jeffrey Riddick said to Fighting Hard for this, if you didn't show it, it could be something or someone, no matter their belief system, could project onto our villains, which I love. That was a tough sell for the studio. They would be like, this doesn't make any sense. You can't see it and you can't fight it, but that's the point.
That is the point. Yeah.
So I love that he went in there. He's like, I'm not taking no for an answer. And then James Wong and Glenn Morgan were super on board with this concept as well. So I know that they backed him in that. And then I have a quote from Glenn again, where he kind of talks about the concept of death. He said the main thing they wanted about death coming to get people is that you never saw a kind of Michael Myers figure. You never saw a killer, and they liked the idea and said, okay, go write it and then we'll see. Yeah. So once they had the basic story, I started cataloging the strange coincidences in my own life. So they kind of played on those real fears. So in comes producer Craig Perry. He seemed to kind of be someone they worked the most with on this. He, when kind of finding a director, he said he wanted to make sure to give this movie like an auteur feeling. And so when he approached Glenn Morgan and James Wong, they initially weren't available for this. I'm assuming they were maybe doing X-Files. And so he kind of kept meeting with people and didn't think anyone was the right fit. So nearly a year later, Glenn and James came back and kind of like out of the blue were like, hey, we're available now. Like, do you have anyone for this project still? And Craig was like, no, it's yours if you want it. So they came back around. Thank fuck.
Worked out the way it was meant to. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, it was meant to be. So Craig Perry said, quote, it says a lot that the team, most known for their work on the X-Files, gravitated towards a movie that began as an idea and what was originally for the show. And so in many ways, Final Destination happened for all the right reasons. Everything came together in the right way at the right time with the right people. And I do feel that so hard with this one. I think it just... The rest of them are fun, but there's something, if you compare this first one to the rest of it, just there's an energy about this one that I don't think was like it leaned into its own jokes after this one. I feel like this one had the most heart of all of them. As far as getting funding, we have obviously New Line Cinema. They kind of accepted financing and distribution rights after Jeffrey Riddick came to them personally and was like, here's the full script, this is what we're doing. And then producer Craig Perry, he worked for Zide Perry Productions, which have you heard? I've never heard of them. And I did not look them up. I'm sorry, guys.
But I don't know why. Anyway, continue.
I should have looked them up. I put it in here, but that's where Craig Perry comes from. So yeah, again, they kind of all met together. After he had the final script, he said he really like fell in love with it. They had the full treatment, and they kind of were then able to take all this funding to do this film. And I'm curious if you know what the budget for this is, because it's pretty robust.
Oh, God, I feel like I'm gonna be bad at guessing this one.
I had no concept of what this was for 2000.
Yeah,
and the effects are really good.
They're really good. 20?
23.
Oh my God.
That was great.
Whoa.
My brain thought like 12.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Well, because first time director too, or first time featured director.
Yeah, but I think they came from like, they probably got that extra money because the three of them together.
Yeah.
They're like, we're good.
You've been doing enough X-Files. Like you're seasoned, clearly. But...
we'll get to what it made back later, so I saved that.
Okay. Because I'm sure it more than made its money back. Yeah.
So good. So production, this was shot in and around Vancouver in British Columbia.
Okay.
With additional scenes shot in Toronto and San Francisco. The airport scenes were shot in Vancouver International Airport and then John F. Kennedy International Airport. And then the exterior of Mrs. Luton's house, they built that in 5 days. And the neighborhood, they built it like in a neighborhood in Vancouver. And the residents loved it so much that they were really upset when they had to make it blow up. They were like, can you just leave it here with me? Because they thought it was a pretty house.
But I'm sure it was non-functional.
There was nothing like... there. They didn't build it.
Yeah.
But I bet they thought it was like really cool. I don't, honestly...
I would be that person. Yeah.
We'd ask.
Yeah.
So the practical and special effects and sets. So the plane, they had reconstructed an airplane inside of a soundstage. It was all set on... It
looked kind of stagey, the airplane.
I mean, most airplanes are. They never you never film in a real one.
Well,
there's like so
it's
many
too
sets.
tight.
Yeah.
That's
what I always
swing a camera.
That's always what I love about planes in film and TV, because I'm like,
they look so comfy.
Bitch, where are we getting an airplane that big?
Yeah.
Domestic flying?
Truly.
There are not 7 rows. What the fuck? like, there's two, and we're squished.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was set on hydraulics, and then they like had a camera rig kind of hooked on a gimbal so that like all the shaking.
That makes sense.
So they built that in, and they were on that set for a few weeks. So like that whole opening took a few weeks.
Wow. And it's only about 10 minutes long or so.
I know, but it sets up the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like this
You
franchise.
gotta get that right. Same as like the prom scene in Carrie.
Yeah.
That's your set piece.
Do you know about Final Destinations? Like all the openings are like,
No,
like they're
tell
all
me.
people like rank them.
Oh,
So like the second
this is a
one's the
thing.
log.
Oh,
The log
okay.
scene. I think the third one is the roller coaster. Third or fourth one is the roller coaster.
Third.
I was like, how many fingers are you holding up? 3 or 4? So like people rank the Final
Okay.
Destination openings. I still think this one makes me sweat just because
It was
anything
pretty
airplane
good.
crash.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it really does again play on your
Yeah.
real fears.
Well, and especially because like all of our airplanes are like crashing left, right, and center.
I was
right
gonna
now,
say right
so-
now, yeah, I'm like, don't get on a plane.
Yeah, true. Ugh.
So producer Craig Perry kind of talked about the plane and building that. He goes, when I saw the scope of and size of that 10,000-pound iron gimbal with 1/3 of a jet plane built on top of
Yeah.
it, I thought to myself, wait a second, is this what we're making? Holy shit.
Yeah.
And when you get inside the body of the plane, they sealed the cabin for shooting. So you
Mm.
truly felt like you were on a real airplane. There was
Wow.
no point of reference outside. All you knew was you were in a plane cabin and it was moving and it was incredibly discerning.
Wow.
Which I love that
That's
they like
really
sealed it up because I'm like, oh, I guess to have things bouncing around and so
Yeah.
they can kind of shoot the whole thing and not have to like rebuild to do one side and
Yeah.
redo the other. So I can only imagine us being an extra on
That'd
that
be really
day or for
fun.
those days, I should say, would be kind of
Yeah.
fun. They also, I have a little bit about the train scene that we see. So I have actor who played Carter, Kerr Smith. He said that was one of his biggest memories was shooting that. So
sure.
yeah, he said one of the trains was set to ram into my car and then already like cut off half, although you couldn't tell, and then it was like split apart and we got hit by an oncoming train. And so the other train was used for the actual dialogue. They actually had a structure built right next to the train tracks. And so they had like a series. They did this. I wish I could find video of this. So if you can, please, because
Cool.
I can't super visualize it. But for the train scene, they had built a structure on the side of the tracks, which has a series of mirrors on it to make it appear as though the scene was taking place on the tracks itself. And he said it freaked him out so much because they would have a real train go right by them.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I feel like
so-
I can kind of
I can kind
I
of
can
see it,
kind
but
of
I wish there
picture,
was
but
video of
yeah,
it.
I would
'cause
like
can.
a photo.
That doesn't seem super safe, but like I get it.
Yeah.
We want it to look real, and they
That's
for being
so cool.
budget friendly.
Wow.
And kind of continuing on with the real life horrors, I feel like I kind of had heard this before, but I expanded on it a little bit. So the film got a lot of criticism. So we know that Jeffrey Riddick kind of took this idea of this woman who like told her daughter to get off the plane and like all that. So he kind of got the idea from that, but he gets criticism, and like the movie gets criticism because it mirrored the events of the TWA Flight 800 off Long Island in 1996, where 16 students and 5 adults died. Jeffrey Riddick has commented on this, saying there was some criticism that the movie was written to exploit this real-life crash. I even realized later they used footage from one real-life crash, which I wasn't particularly happy about. So the plane crash in the beginning is...
Because it looked really real.
Yeah, I'm like, how do you do that? I
Yeah.
think they just like digitized it a little bit to put it in that space, so that's where it kind of looks fake. But yeah, so trigger warning there that is
that's
real.
complicated.
Yeah.
That's complicated.
and so not only do they use that footage from the crash Flight 800, but they use the idea of the students going to Paris when the students on board the real Flight 800
Were they going to Paris?
they were a French club. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that feels a little icky.
I know, I'm wondering.
How did that happen? I wonder
I
if
don't
it's one of
know.
those things where like you maybe see the news story and then forget about it, and then it kind of like works its way out
I don't know.
subconsciously.
It feels icky
It feels
knowing
a little
that.
weird.
I don't think they
yeah.
did that with the rest of these. Hopefully not.
Yeah, and was that the plane crash that they used footage from? Because if so,
I
ooh,
believe so. Yeah.
that feels real weird.
Yeah. Nope, they used that. And not only did they use that, in the film they kind of talk about like when you see the news, they talk about the investigation of like how did this plane crash. They took that from the real life events too. So you'll hear them, they first thought it was a bomb, then they thought it was like a surface to air missile, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah.
And then they kind of finally chalked it up to the result of like a mechanical failure, specifically with the fuel tank, and they actually talk about that in the film as well. So
is the explanation they give in the film similar to what really happened?
fuel tank, yeah. I know. They kind of took like everything.
That's real weird.
It's bad. It's bad. I can't even imagine being like a parent of one of those kids and then seeing this film come out a few years later. So yeah, not great. That's the not greatest part of all of it.
Cool.
We'll go back up here a
Moving
little
right
bit.
along.
They obviously use the John Denver song "Rocking on High." That plays over and over. That's kind of like a through line. And with all the films too, they all have like their little song that you'll like hear. But John Denver had died in a plane crash a few years prior, so that was kind of, again, they're like, I don't know why they got okay with all of this.
I found the use of the John Denver song to be one of the most like emotionally effective parts of the movie, just because it is. I love it when the soundtrack is doing the unexpected, you know, or is playing counter to what's happening emotionally, and so playing like such a comforting song with what's going on is just really it hits.
And it helps too, I think, with the lack of having a physical presence of death. It's like here
it's John Denver.
Yeah, it's John Denver. We talked about it too, one of our first episodes, like getting into a car, like if you were to get into a car crash, it's like what weird song juxtaposed to the scene like would be playing at the time. And it's just like the use of that too, I love. That you're right, it doesn't fit what's on screen, but it's also this like wonderful eerie, like it just slowly, like I feel like you can watch it move just audibly, if that makes sense.
It feels like the song like creeps through the movie.
Through. Yeah, it's weird. I can't explain it. So critics give this film, or there is a 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb, which is actually higher than I thought it was gonna get. People like to shit on this film now.
I'm sure.
I feel like people think it's like a shtick, and I'm like, you're wrong.
But I'm also like, maybe it kind of is a shtick, but it's doing it successfully.
It's a good shtick.
And that's, again, I know I've said this before, I'll say it again, you've got to judge a movie by what it's trying to do. Yeah. And I think by this movie's own standards, it is incredibly successful.
Extremely. Rotten Tomatoes was a little bit ruder. They give it 40%, which I think is so low.
I would expect it to have like at least a 60.
Yeah.
Like it's not fair. A perfect movie, but it's like,
no.
It does what it's meant to, damn it.
So revenue of this film, it obviously made it back, like you said. So it had $10 million in its opening weekend.
God damn.
And was third in the box office. I thought it was funny what it was up against. So at the very bottom was American Beauty.
Oh, funny.
I didn't realize that was out at the same time. And then it was also ahead of Aaron Brockovich and Mission to Mars, which I feel like were like Mission to Mars was a pretty big summer blockbuster. Yeah.
Aaron Brockovich was huge too. I haven't either, but I know it's culturally important.
Yeah. So it ended up grossing almost $113 million worldwide. So
wow.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Kind of killed. And that's not even counting when it went to video, which I can only imagine.
That's just box office.
Box office, yeah. So it did fucking great.
Goddamn.
Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars out of 4, saying,
again, I have no idea what's going on.
I know this man makes no sense to me, and I love it. I was expecting it to get a 1 star, or like maybe a 2, because I feel like I sometimes wish he did a 5-star system versus a 4, because then it gets really weird.
It gets confusing.
So he said, quote, "The movie is neither quite serious nor quite ironic. Sometimes it's funny, but in a creepy way rather than a breezier style of Scream movies." Which I can't remember what he gave Scream.
Oh, interesting.
And he goes on to say, "Final Destination," I love this, "will no doubt be a hit and inspire the obligatory sequels." He was right. Ding, ding, ding. "Like the original Scream. This movie is too good to be the end of the road. It is not the final destination. I have visions of my own. I foresee poor Alex making new friends and then envisioning their deaths as they embark on these ocean liners, trains, buses, and a word that I don't know what the fuck that is. I'm not reading that. What the hell is that?
Dirigibles?
Shut the fuck up. How did you all know what that was? Dirigibles, for those of you. What the fuck is a dirigible?
It's like a, yeah, like a balloon.
Roger Ebert is envisioning them on a blimp.
I would love to see it. I'll be real.
Alex should be like, I gotta go save someone. Let me get to my blimp. Where the fuck? What in the 2000s?
Good play style. He's like, I call shotgun on top of the balloon.
What is this, Mission Impossible? Like, what the hell? That's stupid. I love that you all... How did you all guess dirigibles?
Hard to pronounce words for transportation that start with D.
Fuck? I hope I'm not alone in that. Anyways, he said he ends on, the funny thing about Hollywood is dirigibles. It can't seem to get enough of dead teens.
Can't seem to get enough of dirigibles.
Yeah. Talk about biting the hand that feeds you. I was surprised to hear, but I love that he was like, oh yeah, this is going to be an absolute fucking hit with everyone.
Well, and I think he's touching on something that was a lot of why it worked for me. Is like it's this concept that's very expansive. You can take it in a lot of different directions, and it follows through on that. Like it delivers on really saying, okay, both of our films I think are what if movies. They're movies where it's like there's an initial question posed, and then it's about seeing all of the different paths that the narrative can follow down. And I think part of what worked so well to me about this movie is that it really does a good job. It kind of like throws plot out the window and is like, what are the most interesting directions we can follow this what if? And that's really satisfying.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say too, and even the way they do the death, the thing that I find fun is they could always do like straight up deaths, but the way like Final Destination and why it works so well, it's like, okay, you would think you would slip on this thing and fall on the knife that's right there. It's like, no, actually you wouldn't. You think you're going to slip on this, and then you fall on the knife goes, and then it's like, here's
and
this.
And then a chair falls and pushes the knife into you.
Yeah. So I kind of love the inventiveness of these deaths, and that is the movie. The movies are what's the most fucked up way that like, we can make you not guess at where this is going to go.
It's like a Rube Goldberg of death.
That's what we said yesterday.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of his fucking name.
Yeah.
That's what we said yesterday, and it really is. And so it was even yesterday, like we were talking about all the ways we would die and like what would be the sequence of it, because it's not ever just the straightforward
it can't be what you
thing.
Expect. Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. Even the trailer, like the trailer for Bloodlines, they just showed the tattoo shop. And this kid has like a septum piercing, and there's a fan involved and chain. But like that's not what killed him. Right. You know, it's the other things that happen. So I just appreciate a really fucked up, fucking straightforward premise. And so where did I leave off?
You've given us Roger Ebert's take.
Ebert, yeah. So we're gonna jump back to Jeffrey Riddick. Like I said, he's kind of the godfather of the franchise, and he kind of, to end in like on a lighter note, he said, quote about the franchise in itself, he says, it's cool to have one movie that's going to be talked about after you die as a life goal. If that's what I leave behind as a legacy, that's enough, but I still want more. He's kind of, again, given credit in the characters, but he really didn't have much involvement after this. So I'm very curious of why. I didn't delve into that too much. We also have a quote from Tony Todd that I want to end on as well, for you specifically.
Thank you.
He says about the franchise, it's fun, it's playful, it's risky, it's like going on a roller coaster. People are always fascinated by the looming presence of death, and that's what makes horror so popular in the first place. We all want to be scared.
Yes.
Which again, I think this movie I think has fucked up a whole entire generation. This franchise has fucked up a generation. Driving behind logs or anything, tanning beds I was never able to go to again. I mean, even roller coasters, and as much as I love them, I have such fear from one of the opening scenes, and it's kind of wild. I didn't realize, this is a 25 years later for us, and the fact that we're finally getting a new one, and the fact that there's still so many ways to fuck us up.
It's endless.
It's endless. So I just think it like stands so on its own. I'm glad you had fun.
There's like a way in which it almost feels like a Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton movie at
Yeah.
times. Like, there's elements to the ways the deaths
sure.
happen that just feel like really well choreographed
Yeah.
silent slapstick comedy.
Yeah.
And I just have so much appreciation for that.
Oh,
on like a,
I want you to watch more, or like I want to send
think
you
I'm
some
going
of my
to now.
favorites.
Do
Oh my God. I feel like
it.
you.
I
Yeah.
loved this. I
Yeah.
really like it. Totally surprised me.
Yeah. The inventive ways, the foreshadowing in them, they really kind of take this different life on. Like this one's so good for so many reasons, but it kind of is like, I feel like everyone has different, and then they get like, they kind of get a little bad in the sense that they started to be made for 3D. So they get really bad CG, but the
Fair.
deaths are still really fucking fun. But yeah, I'm curious to see like if you watch them all, like you can put them on in the background. These are my favorite summer background movies. I know it's like so fucked up, but they are. I'm just like,
yeah.
You can hear the death and you're like,
Yeah.
no, gotta run over to see
it's
this
my
one.
favorite.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love when she dies like that. There's a really good like hook elevator scene one. That really fucks me up. Yeah, elevators. But yeah, I'm curious to see if you watch more, like what your favorite deaths are gonna be, because I feel like everyone kind of has one.
Well, now I've got to go do my research.
Yeah,
Pick a favorite.
Oh man, I fumbled through that, but thanks for listening.
It was a wild ride, just like Final Destination.
Christ. I thought I was so prepared. I walked in here.
I had a great time with that. That was great.
I'm glad. Yeah, I have a lot more appreciation, and Jeffrey Riddick is like my new favorite person right now. I just really like the way he talked about it. So
that's so cool. I'm really curious what he's up to now, like what he's working on, what he's gonna make next.
There's a couple little things. I know he needs to be like.
Yeah.
Get out there a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like
Somebody put more money behind
Jeffrey Riddick.
Yeah.
Take a break.
Yeah.
Please.
Be right back.
Please. Yeah.
And we'll be right back. And we're back. All right. Now I can finally talk about how much I fucking hated this movie.
My God, it's so funny.
I am going to do my best to be as fair as I possibly can. I feel like this is the first time that I've been covering a film that really didn't work for me to this degree. Like there have been films we covered where I was like, not every part of this worked, but I can appreciate it.
Sure.
This one, and I'll say off the bat, part of the reason why is because I was holding it to a very high standard.
Okay.
And I recognize that is a big part of what's going on here, is if I had gone in with a different set of expectations, I would have had a different experience. But as I usually do, I did my notes before watching the film, and I think part of what happened was that my notes sent me in with high expectations, because everything that I researched about this film, I was like, oh, this is so Siena coded. I'm gonna fucking love this.
Right.
I had told you before, I tried to watch this film one time and fell asleep during it. And as you said, Siena doesn't do that very often.
Yeah.
And the fact that I had fallen asleep during it and never felt compelled to go back was telling. But I went in expecting to at least have a good time with it, and then did my notes and was like, oh, I'm gonna fucking love this. Watched it, loved the first 10 minutes, was like, oh fuck yeah, this is so up my alley. And then
downhill,
just like fell off a cliff and kept falling and fell and fell and fell.
I love it. I love this movie.
I'm so sorry, and
I'm sorry for you.
I also
I fucking enjoyed the hell out of it.
I recognize that this is a really beloved film, and like I'm so nervous to talk about it in this way, because I know a lot of people who share my tastes really love this movie. A lot of our listeners really love this movie.
Yeah.
When I went on Letterboxd to look at the reviews, I was like, oh cool, I'm the only person I know who rated this poorly.
Well, at least for a review podcast. Like, you're going to give us lots of
thank God.
goodies.
So all of this is just to say, get that out there at the front. I took my notes before I watched it and hated it, so hopefully my notes themselves are not tainted with this hatred. I gotta say, like, I'm not even mad. I'm more intrigued at what you didn't like. Okay. All right. Let's get through all the good stuff.
When did it come out again?
It came out in 2014. Well, so it's listed as a 2014 movie. It had its festival run in 2014. Comes out in theaters for like the wide general public to see in early 2015.
Okay.
So you can see it listed as both.
Yeah.
Shot in late 2013. I have a whole lot of info about all sorts of stuff about like what camera it was shot on, what lenses they used, all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
It's a recent enough film that it was pretty easy to find good material on it.
People really talked about this one a lot, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and particularly director David, who because he has a 3-part name, I keep getting him mixed up with David Gordon Green and wanting to call him David Gordon Green, and he's not David Gordon Green, so I'm just going to call him Director David.
That saves us all the time, to be fair.
So Director David, this is his second feature.
Okay.
He wrote, directed, and produced it. His first feature came out in 2010, and it was called The Myth of the American Sleepover, which was a coming-of-age dramedy that he made for somewhere between 30 to 50,000, which, as I wrote, we love to see it.
Yeah.
This is part of why I went in with really high expectations. So I was like, oh, I love this kind of story of like filmmaker who made something out of nothing. Their first feature comes back and like hits it out of the ballpark with their second feature, and it's a horror film. This should be right up my alley.
It did for everyone but you.
Yep. Sure did. So after It Follows, he goes on to make Under the Silver Lake in 2018, and he has 3 upcoming projects listed on IMDb. One is called Flower Veil Street, and that's in post-production, supposed to come out next year, so they've already shot. Then there's a project called Evergreen Pines and the Fading Summer, which is in pre-pro, and I'm not going to say anything about it because the title alone says it all.
Yeah.
And of course, the famous sequel, They Follow, which is being produced by Neon. We've gotten a teaser poster. We're going to talk about that a little bit at the end. However, despite this being his second feature, unlike the situation with Alejandro Amenábar, he was 40 years old at the time he directed It Follows, which I think is important context since it is so much a film about coming of age and teenagehood, and because his first film was about that too, albeit in a very different tone. So clearly, teenage Americana is something that's very important to David's work. Cast, we have Micah Monroe as Jay Height. Of course, we most recently saw her as Agent Lee Harker in Longlegs, which I know Al is a fan of. She's also in Honey Boy. She's in Independence Day, Resurgence, Greta, Watcher. But this is very early in her career, and this is definitely, I think, responsible in large part for her becoming the scream queen that she is today.
Yeah.
Did you just say she's very young at this point?
Oh God,
was
how old was she?
What you said? No, her character's 19. She's 20 at the time she's shooting this.
Oh wow.
So unlike Carrie, she's playing the age that she is.
Wild. Never happens.
It never happens. And that was actually my very next note. You teed me up for that wonderfully. And just a weird little Micah Monroe mini tid. Her mom is an ASL interpreter, which I just wanted to shout out because I've always thought that actors who know ASL tend to be more interesting to watch because it's like this whole other mode of communication. So love that. Her character's name is a Jamie Lee Curtis homage. Jamie. Jamie Lee Curtis also has a sister named Kelly, and Jay's sister is named Kelly in the movie. So there's a lot of homages to like Carpenter, to Halloween in particular, to we'll talk about some of the references, but 80s horror big in this film. We have Keir Gilchrist as Paul. He's known for playing Sam in Atypical. He's also Marshall in The United States of Tara, which I loved. He's Craig in It's Kind of a Funny Story. He's in The Stanford Prison Experiment. And I did not remember this at all. We've actually covered a film with him in it on the podcast before. Did you remember this?
No, but he has such a distinctive face.
I know. He is the young Henry in Dead Silence as a little kid.
Whoa.
Yeah. Wild, right?
Everyone listening is probably like, yeah, you fucking brought him up and Dead
Didn't
Silence, you probably credited
at all. Yeah, no idea.
Whoa. Yeah.
Which we covered almost this exact time last year. So weird little...
That's a year ago. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, wild. No way.
We have Olivia Lucardi as Yara Davis. She's also Melissa in The Deuce. She's Jennifer in Orange is the New Black, and she's in Money Monster. We have Daniel Zavato as Greg. He's Money in Don't Breathe. He's Rodney in Woman of the Hour. He's Father Esquivel in The Pope's Exorcist. He's Jonah in Lady Bird. He's Tiago on Penny Dreadful City of Angels, and he was in Station 11. And we have Jake Weary as Hugh/Jeff. He's actually been working a ton in New Mexico recently
Whoa,
because, listen to these most recent credits. He was in How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which shot here, and my lead actor was in it.
Oh, funny.
He was in Bleeding Love, which also shot here. He was in Trigger Warning. He's also Stanley in Oh Canada, the new Paul Schrader movie. Yeah. He's Darren in Animal Kingdom. He's in It Chapter 2, and he was Cyrus on Pretty Little Liars, which I watched for a while back in high school. This was shot by Mike Giolakis, whose work will probably feel familiar as I list these titles, because his films very much feel like they were shot by the same cinematographer, which I love when that's the case. He also did Under the Silver Lake with director David, but get this, he shot Jordan Peele's Us. And M. Night Shyamalan's Old, and M. Night Shyamalan's Split, and The Eyes of Tammy Faye,
this makes sense,
and Reptile, and The Piano Lesson.
Damn.
So
I don't know the last few, but
all very much in the same. Wow. They all look like they're shot by the same person. Yep. And so often you don't have that working with that wide variety of genres, subject matter, director. He clearly, his eye comes through very intensely on screen.
I love that.
And this was not his first feature as DP, but it does seem to me like I think this is the one that really made his career take off, particularly because, you know, that is one of the things that even I can't fault about this movie. And that was a big part of the Letterboxd review that I gave it, was actually like, I feel like this movie did a disservice to its cinematography. Like, it is so beautifully shot that I feel like that's part of why my expectations were so high.
Yeah.
Because
it was one of the things I remember, like, people at the time to, like, those images stuck so hard in all of our brains that, like, even if you didn't know anything about it or you weren't a fan of horror, like, you talked about, like, even the poster alone with the car is, like,
is iconic.
It's so iconic. So, yeah.
And one of the things that I ended up kind of going down a little bit of a rabbit hole about our DP here, and he started out in G&E, in Grip and Electric, and I think it shows.
Makes so much sense.
Right?
Yep.
The lighting in this movie is so much of what is so
all the ones that you listed.
Yeah. And it not only makes sense to me that he was working as a gaffer like up until like a year before this came out. So
it was only 10 years ago he's done all that since. It's kind of insane.
And he's talked in interviews about kind of one of the main things he learned from that was to light simply, was to do things with the smallest number of heads possible, to find the swiftest, most direct route possible, which I often think is what works the best for horror, is when this is something that my gaffer and I talk a lot about, is getting really frustrated with flat lighting, where it's just like there's, you know, your classic 3-point system, everything's really just like lit so that you can see the most. Horror to me is the most interesting when there's when you're really playing with the shadow, and that shows so much in the way this film is shot.
For sure.
The soundtrack is composed by Disaster Piece, aka Richard Freeland, or Vreeland, apologies, starts with a V.
Wildly different enough.
I will also say I loved the score. I thought the score was fantastic. There were so many individual pieces that I thought worked so well.
Oh my god. Where are we gonna fall off? When's it gonna get us?
I know. When's it gonna come?
Yeah.
So he'd composed for video games, including Fez, beforehand. He'd also done some shorts, but this is his first feature film score. And he goes on to compose for Under the Silver Lake, again with director David. He does Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
No!
And he does Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Oh,
so this project kind of really establishes him as an up-and-coming composer, particularly in this sort of horror space. And
love it.
Fascinatingly, I love when we get this kind of story. Disaster Piece was hired before the film was shot. So director David had been playing Fez, was like, oh, I really love this soundtrack. Thought of the script he was working on, which we're about to talk a little bit more about how the script got written. But he's working on the script at the time and just reaches out, sends him a screenplay draft, and is like, do you think you'd be interested in composing for this? And Disaster Piece actually has a little cameo in the film. He's the one who's doing the high school announcements when Jay comes looking for Hugh. So we get a little voice cameo, at least.
Yeah, the music in this really, like, sticks out. So it's so eerie and so, like, tinkly.
And I thought it was really well chosen when there is score and when it's silent.
Yeah.
I thought that was extremely well handled.
Yeah.
So moving into background, the writing of this, we have a lot of interviews with director David about where the story came from. But I do want to, oh wait, no, I didn't give us our taglines yet. I've got to go back to our taglines. This just reminded me of it. So the main tagline for this film, there's really only one, and it's, it doesn't think, it doesn't feel, it doesn't give up, which...
It follows.
Yeah, it's fine. It works.
Yeah.
It's serviceable. Hilariously, though, the top comment on the YouTube trailer that I watched was, the tagline should be, "There's never been a better time to be a virgin." Which, love.
How about don't do it?
Yep. Just say no.
Just say no. No is a full sentence.
Okay.
Yikes.
Going back to our interviews with director David. So, let's see. I do have to shout out before I get into the meat of his interviews that there was one just hilarious quote that he gave where the interviewer was teasing him about how this film was like turning people off of sex in the same way that like Final Destination turned people off of airplanes. So the interviewer's like joking about how nobody's going to want to have sex or go in swimming pools after this, and director David says, quote, "People should still have sex and they should still go swimming for sure." So just wanted to say,
in pools. It'll be fine.
Sex
So
approved by director David.
Oh my
We're
God,
cool.
that's so funny.
Okay, moving into the actual meat of those interviews. This is another horror story that kind of dates back to the director's childhood fears. Quote, "The basic idea of being followed by something that looked like different people, that was very slow and always coming, came from a recurring nightmare I had as a kid. Later, as an adult, I added the sexual aspect of passing on this terrible thing. It came at 2 different points in my life." And hilariously, he actually goes on to kind of psychoanalyze himself a little bit here and says, quote,
Love that.
"I had it," I think he's referring to the dream here, "when I was very young." Oh yeah, "I had it when I was very young, the nightmare. I had it several times and I still remember images from it. I didn't use those images for the film, but the basic idea and the feeling I used." Which again, all this is setting us up for something Siena loves, which is a film that carries the feeling of a dream. Where did we go wrong? Whatever I was going through, from what I understand, it's a basic anxiety dream. Whatever I was going through at the time, my parents divorced when I was around that age, so I imagine that had something to do with it. I've watched horror films since I was a kid, and there's a ton of them that could have influenced it. In the dream, I remember feeling like the monster's a zombie, like a vampire, but it's something else. At that age, I definitely would have seen Night of the Living Dead. He also goes on to reference Halloween, The Thing, Cronenberg, De Palma, Hitchcock, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and Cat People. Sure. So lots of callbacks to that kind of golden age of Hollywood and also early proto-slashers. And of course, he's obviously a very big David Lynch fan too. Again, I should love this. One interviewer... or one reviewer of the film also compares it to the M.R. James short story Casting the Runes, which I wanted to shout out because we love when there's like a little bit of a literary reference. However, weirdly, I never saw a single person talking about how similar this film is to Ringu, which feels to me like the most direct point of comparison in terms of the idea of you have 7 days to pass this on or else you die. Like that. The mechanics of that comes directly from that. True. And I've never seen people bring up that as a comparison, including director David, which is weird because he brings up a lot of his own references. And I'm like, that seems really obvious, but okay. I have some thoughts about that, but yeah.
Like, how dare you?
Truly. Let's see. And I also think Ringu, it also has the teen element too, which
for sure.
That's such a huge part of
fully
this.
See it.
Yeah.
And even like, just the small, like when she walks too, it's just like everything. Yeah.
The way the horror is played. Yeah. The kind of like she's slowly emerging.
Yeah. There's this looming, like death is looming there for you. It's so true.
I think there's clearly this film owes a big debt to Ringu and the Ring, and I've not seen anybody talk about it.
Weird.
Reviewers, people who worked on it, anybody. Anyway, so he starts working on this script in 2011, so 2 years before it shoots. The year after his first feature comes out, and initially he's kind of treating it as a side project while he's working on a different script that he wants to be his second feature. But he's having trouble writing the other project, and also he's realizing, as one does very quickly, that it's a little bit easier to get financing for a horror film. And
how many times have we talked about that?
And so It Follows kind of becomes the focus, but he quickly realizes a problem that I relate to, which is that this is not an easily pitchable film. Because the concept does not work well when said out loud. And here's a quote from him.
Ooh.
He says, "Whenever you say it out loud, it sounds like the worst thing ever. It's really tough to not have it just sound pretty ridiculous. So I would say, just trust me and know it's a horror film." As far as getting people on board, it was about sharing the script. I put a big lookbook together. I did a lot to try and get people to understand that it's about the tone of the film. But, like, our industry is not built for pitching that way. I know, because that's how I tried to pitch my film, and it was very hard.
Yeah.
So again, it's like there's so much of this film is coming from a place of trying to pull up this kind of subconscious stew feeling, you know, which I really admire. Themes, approach, and history. So this film, for only being 11 years old, has been widely film theoried.
Yeah.
So the number of film student theses that I found that were written about this film, I cannot tell you.
Yeah. Kind of seems, I hate to say, like, it seems like an easy one to go to. So for
it does. Yeah. Well,
students to
especially
do,
because, like, and every single one of them was, like, about this film as a metaphor for something different, which that gives you a little hint at the problem that I had with this film. But there's just a wealth of different interpretations about what it is supposed to mean. Is it HIV? Is it another STD? Is it about shame and anxiety around sex? Is it about shame and anxiety around the economy? That was a read that I found.
Whoa.
Is it about the divide between childhood and adulthood? There's a paper out there for all of these, including readings based on a post-COVID analysis. Like, there, you can find...
You could put anything.
It's very much a Rorschach test.
Yeah.
You can read whatever the
totally
fuck
is.
you want
Oh
onto
my God.
this film.
Like, what's the stupidest thing we could say about it?
Exactly. But as interested as he is in pinpointing where this could have come from in his own childhood trauma and his parents' divorce, he is not interested in trying to unpack what it symbolizes very much. And so he says, quote, "I'm not personally that interested in where it comes from. To me, it's dream logic in the sense that they're in a nightmare, and when you're in a nightmare, there's no solving the nightmare, even if you try to solve it," which it's very David Lynch energy there in terms of both the coming from dream logic and the wanting to resist interpretation.
Sure.
Which is funny to me because I don't think this film is speaking in terribly subtle metaphorical language, but we're going to get to that later. He gives a few different explanations of the sexual component of the movie, which, let me just read them. In one interview, he says, quote, "In a very simple way, it's a realization of mortality. It's not just about them having sex. It's sex is a normal part of our life, and in living your life, you become aware that we're here for a very limited amount of time." I don't love that.
That's bad.
It's bad.
Dare I say.
We get another quote from him.
Okay. Is this one better?
I think it's worse.
I don't think that makes sense at fucking all.
This is where it starts falling apart for me.
Cool.
Okay, great. So in another interview, he says, quote, "I thought that it would be nice to have the monster be something that can move between people. It just sort of made sense to me that it would be something passed through sex. It would be a way to link the characters, to connect them both physically and emotionally. And it tied to some of the larger themes that I was working towards." Which, first of all, which themes? Which ones?
Well, I don't know.
Which ones?
I don't know. Do you have any themes?
But secondly, I can understand the idea of coming to sex as something that you back into, but that's a very loaded thing to choose.
Also, well, you said he's the idea of transferring the monster back and forth. Like, well, then that goes away from any metaphor, any whatever, anything. I'm like,
it
that doesn't
becomes
even
very
make
literal.
sense.
It becomes fully literal, and this is
it's
where
a completely different monster. Then it's not a metaphor at all.
Yep. Is the sex a metaphor or not?
Yeah.
This movie wants to have it both ways.
Got it.
This is where it starts falling apart for me.
But I don't like his thought.
We're gonna get more into it. So more on that
bad.
later. In the meantime, interesting to note that he builds that kind of lack of desire to give a clear answer to the origins of it into the script structure and says, quote, "I did not want to have this film turn into a quest for an origin story, for the way to explain this thing. Oftentimes horror films start out in a way that's about dealing with this terror and trying to survive and then quickly turn into a quest for answers. And we do that a little bit in this movie. I think some of that is normal and natural, but ultimately you're going to hit a wall." And I agree with that to a certain degree. However, I also think there's a happy medium, you know, in terms of I think you don't have to give us all the answers as to what it is,
Right.
but you need to know.
Okay, but here's Final Destination is a perfect movie to talk to this about because they very much wanted death to not be attached to any one thing, but they said everyone, like, death
You
is
bring
universal.
your own thing to it.
And so no matter where you come from, so they gave us that space to make it what we wanted. He sounds like he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Or he's trying to please, I wonder if he's trying to please everybody.
That's the thing, is I feel like he wants it to be every single interpretation at once.
Yeah.
Without having
If it's
really
successful.
built that into the structure of the script.
Yeah.
It feels to me more like there's a lot of questions that were unanswered for him at a script level that then don't get answered for us in the narrative. And I'm okay with things not getting answered in the narrative, but I want the director to know.
Yeah, I was going to say it doesn't affect my watch experience. 'Cause again, I think like I interpret it the way I want to.
Yeah.
And like, I just don't like that he... Like, you're in charge of this, buddy.
You
This
need
is
to know.
yours. Yeah.
It's totally fine
Make
to be
a
like, I don't
stance.
want the audience to be able to take this, like, pat, trite answer from me from my film.
Yeah.
But you still need to know what it means to you.
Yeah, weird.
Anyway. Okay, so he also talks a lot about the role of water in this movie, and when one interview brings up the idea of water as kind of connected to the womb, he seems very into that, but it's hard to tell where his lines lie on what is too much interpretation versus the right amount.
Yeah.
He also talks a lot about structurally, very intentionally spacing out the horror scenes so they don't come on each other's heels, and says, quote, "For me, the movie was always about the waiting spaces as opposed to those moments of attack or the moments where you see it. It was always the intention that the horror scenes would be spaced out and that it would be more about the anxiety of waiting." And that to me is where you see the Hitchcock and De Palma come across a lot.
This movie stresses me out.
And that I think is the part of it that is the most effective, is the
So
sense
good.
of dread of something that is moving slowly. That to me is
Like the snail trend on TikTok.
What is that? Help?
There's a little snail that's just chasing you to kill you, and you have to keep outrunning it. You
Sounds like a lot of my childhood nightmares, actually.
Yeah, this movie reminds me of that. I wonder if he would agree with that.
There you go.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the
It's
snail.
open to interpretation,
Yeah,
Al.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
snail if you want it to be. So production. What do you know what the budget of this was?
I can imagine this was his second
Mm-hmm.
feature, and he was making it came out right at the same-ish time, or like right after.
It came out in 2014.
Say, was this a studio?
It was distributed by studios, but it was an indie production.
Ooh, I'm gonna say 700. Okay, am I right?
That's not far off. It was 1.3.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I almost said a million.
Yeah,
Damn it.
you were really close.
Okay.
You're right in the right area.
Okay.
So
Yeah, makes sense.
1.3 mil. Production begins in late 2013 in and around Detroit, which is where director David is from. I wrote down as a note for Al that he was born in Clawson, which probably means something to you, even if it doesn't to me.
My house growing up, like 3 blocks, so like a 5-minute walk. You're in Clawson. We were like bumped up. So my downtown Royal Oak was further than downtown Clawson, so I would go to downtown Clawson.
Oh, wow.
For like food and stuff. So yeah, I like Clawson. I'm extremely familiar. Yeah, so we were neighbors.
I love that. Yeah,
it's like
so,
right bumped up. So
like the
school and everything.
The milieu that this story is growing out of is probably very familiar.
The ice cream shop is like, we looked it up too because I was like, that looks really familiar. It was like literally down the road from where I grew up too.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So I recognize
this.
lots of things. I forgot it took place in Detroit until we put it back on, and I'm like, how did I forget that?
Well,
Because I was just like, this has to be Detroit, and then I looked it up. I was like, yeah, it is. Like, there's no way.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is like every house ever.
Oh, it's Detroit, all
yeah,
right.
that brick, you can't get around that.
Well,
Those lawns bleeding, backyards not having fencing. It's such a Michigan thing.
Interesting.
It's just
I didn't
one
know
big. So when
that.
they're hanging out in the back, it looks like
Oh.
front yards. And when the person walks by, but she's not it. Our
I-
backyards all bleed
I
together.
thought that was like a weird park. Like,
Yeah, no, that's what Michigan looks like.
that is so
There's
interesting.
invisible fence lines.
Wow.
Yeah, so,
Oh,
anyways.
wild.
Yes, very familiar though.
Which Michigan's also another state like New Mexico that offers film tax incentives.
Especially then, too.
Especially that this was like the heyday of Michigan filmmaking. Which it also interested me watching this so close to Barbarian, which is set in Detroit, but so little of it is shot there. And like that was one of the things that I did like about this was like the shots of Detroit felt like they were shot by somebody who grew up there.
It was absolutely that. It was, cut right through my heart.
See, again, I'm trying to give credit where credit's due as much as I can.
No. I still love this movie. So,
good.
And I love,
And again, I'm not trying to yuck anybody else's yum. I know you hate that saying, but like, if y'all love it, I want you to keep loving it.
Yeah, be with me. I still love it.
I don't want this
I don't
to
like
be
his
like,
quotes so far. I hate those, but I do love this movie. So I'm enjoying the things you're telling me.
Trying to change anybody else's mind. This is just why I feel the way I feel. Yeah. So, okay.
Oh no. Okay. We're turning a corner. We're turning down a dark.
Almost.
Corner.
So visually, director David and DP Giolakis stick to wide-angle lenses as much as possible, and that's largely they want to get as much of the landscape in as possible, and also to play with the drama of the slow approach through space, which is why you're really working with depth of field a lot.
Yeah.
And so Giolakis estimates in Filmmaker magazine that they probably shot about 80% of the film on a Cooke 18mm lens, which is right on the border of being so wide that you start getting fisheye distortion.
Oh, funny.
They only went above a 50mm, which is as close to human eye as you usually get, once, according to this interview, for one scene. And Giolakis notes that, quote, the goal was to see with as much depth of field for the majority of the film as we could get away with, kind of the opposite of the shallow focus look, to use that wide frame as a way to create tension. It's shot 90% on an ARRI Alexa, 10% on a Red Epic, which has a much smaller body than the Alexa, and they needed that for two things. One was the wheelchair rigs, and the other was the underwater shots. So those are the only two times you see a different camera coming in. And they did not have a remote head because of the budget, so those long, slow pans that you get are all just Giolakis on a fluid tripod head, just as he says, quote, just rehearsing a bunch and trying to do the best I could to have the move not feel human. Which is
the school one in particular is
those
so good.
those like slow 180 pans.
Damn,
that's all by hand. Which
good on
like
him. Holy shit,
fucking impressive. That's hard to do. And they both cite photographer Gregory Crewdson as a reference, which is a preview of my birthday episode, because Gregory Crewdson is my favorite, and I think is a big inspiration behind one of the films that we're going to cover for my birthday. God, do I love Gregory Crewdson. We've talked about this before, right? Have we?
I feel like, I don't know.
Do you know him?
Refresh me.
I
never remember anyone's name, Siena.
He's my favorite working still photographer today. Okay. He does like these very kind of like David Lynch style nightmare suburbia sort of cinematic photos. I'll like
give me some. After this for sure.
Some are appearing on the screen right now.
Right
here.
We should throw those.
And so that's somebody that they both talked a lot about, referenced a lot, and here's a quote from Giolakis. He said, we were both big fans of Crewdson, and David had him in the lookbook from day one. Crewdson's photographs had that same kind of surreal suburban imagery that we'd wanted for It Follows.
I probably have seen these photos before.
I think you're gonna,
because I love weird, creepy, like,
I feel like I'll pull up one photo and you're gonna be like, oh, it's this guy.
Yeah.
I adore him, and that's a big part of why I was so frustrated by this movie. Was it is shot like a Gregory Crewdson still image. They're directly quoting him, and yet it felt to me like it worked better as a series of stills than as a narrative.
Okay.
Like I was like, I would love the coffee table book of this.
Yeah.
That's not what you're going for in a movie, though. So, okay, they spent about 3 months going over Mitchell's storyboards together to get ready for this. So it's heavily storyboarded, heavily, this is not the kind of film where you're improvising a whole lot of your shots. This is has a very planned feeling. Cast and crew, there were no casting stories for this one, which usually I find a lot of good stuff in there. However, I will note that the extra tall version of the entity that we see, the really tall guy, played by Mike Lanier, who was at the time one half of the world's tallest twins and was 7'7".
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Which I do find his performance incredibly effectively creepy. He's
the
definitely...
way he comes into the fucking door frame.
Oh, yeah, he is by far the most effective version of the entity to me. So making of, much like The Love Witch, this is very intentionally set in an undefined time. And so part of the way they do that is, again, like The Love Witch, you get this mix of old and new in terms of the technology, the cars, the phones, where people are calling on landlines, but some of the cars are modern. So it's very similar kind of no place, no time. And this was part of an overall philosophy of filmmaking on David's part. We talked kind of a little bit about this idea earlier, but there's a more in-depth quote here where he says that, quote, film doesn't have to operate within the world we live in. The ground rules of the film world don't have to be how we understand the world, and something doesn't have to be fantasy to take some elements from fantasy. Movies are very much dreams in a way, and you can use that to your advantage. And in that interview, he's speaking specifically about the fact that the teenage characters don't have pop culture references built into their dialogue, which normally that's a big part of a film with teenagers in it. But I think offers a good insight into how he approached the film as a whole. And again, I find that really effective.
Yeah, he does it effective. We just watched a movie recently that was not effective at doing that. I didn't know what time it was in the worst way possible.
Oh, no.
It was Finn Wolfhard's like directorial debut. I mean, he's like 20.
Oh, no, is this the summer camp one?
It was, oh God, you guys, it was really bad.
Oh, no.
It was really bad. But it's like it showed up and you thought it was like maybe 90s because they're like talking about puka shell necklaces and the cars.
Like it. Yeah.
But then they have cell phones, but then they're like referencing a time frame that's like not like, how would you have that phone, but then you're making this pop culture reference, but then you dress like this. So like, I will say I'm happy like they did that well, almost to a point I didn't notice in the best way possible. Which I think is
that's what it should be. Is like I either want to not notice it at all, or I want it to feel like this kind of eerie incongruity. I don't want it to feel like a mistake. Yeah. Which that sounds like it felt like a mistake.
Oh, it was, it's bad.
And there's also something similar going on costume-wise, kind of keeping you from placing what time of year it's happening. Yeah. Like, the foliage on the streets, it looks like it's taking place around Halloween. But you see characters outside in T-shirts, you see characters outside in swimsuits, you see characters outside in coats. Yeah. And, like, all of them look equally comfortable. Which I imagine the actors were not, but it's interesting.
I wonder.
And so it's like it's this kind of any time of year, every time of year at once sort of feeling. Many of the locations are places with personal significance to Mitchell. The park they shot at was his go-to childhood park, which I thought was cute.
I know, I was trying to place that fucking park too.
Oh,
I think it's in Sterling Heights.
I should have looked up the name. That sounds familiar, but for the scene where we get kind of the rules of it explained, they shot the exterior of an abandoned asylum and the interior of the former Packard plant. Although they only ended up with that interior location after someone was murdered at their first choice interior a week before they were scheduled to shoot there.
Yeah. That's on track.
I knew this was the reaction you were going to have. I was like, that sounds about right.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's just like, unfortunately in Michigan as a whole, but like Detroit, there's like so many abandoned places that are like, there's squatters and there's... So murder happens.
Murder happens.
Murder happens.
Hashtag murder happens.
Should be the tagline.
That's this episode title. The pacing of the cut is also a very big part of this particular style. And again, we have plenty of quotes from director David. He said, quote, "I wanted to have the film be as immersive as possible. And so it was about placing the viewer and the audience within the world. So we slowed down some of the pacing. We'll hold on a cut a little longer than I think people will be used to. And that's letting people be familiar with the frame and the geography of the space so that you can see the character and you're on that frame for long enough that you might start to scan the background and the edge of the frame. And so when we cut to a shot, it's not about how quickly can you understand what's within this composition before we cut to the next. It's okay, well, this is the space we're in right now. It's about understanding space, which I thought, again, I love that. That's so well put. It's a great way to approach how to capture what's unique about this story on camera in a way that suits it the best. Hilariously, one of the hardest shots was the naked roof man.
Really?
Yeah.
That simple, tiny little shot that we see twice. Funny.
I have a quote from director David on it. He said, we were very careful about it. Our stunt coordinator went up. He had to be harnessed to the roof to make sure it was safe. So there was a lot of prep work that went into making it happen because actually it's quite high up and kind of dangerous. So we put some time into making sure it was safe for him. And then it was just about getting that shot. You know, we had to clear the street, make sure no one was around. That was a tricky one to do.
Oh my God, funny. Of all the ones.
In a funny little sub-tid, though, that scene and a couple others had to be reshot for the trailer with undies on. Yep.
They couldn't show the pubises.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it. How dare.
And one more how'd they shoot that story for the opening shot, courtesy of DP Geolakis. He said, quote, "I think it might have been our last day of production, actually," which I love when you do a first to last or last first. That's always kind of fun. We shot with a very stripped down crew. It was just pretty much 50 feet of dolly track, the dolly, and 2 guys pushing the dolly. It was a little bit less than a half a day of shooting. We set it up and started rehearsing during the daylight, trying to nail down the timing, and then we started rolling when the sun started going down. We got maybe a couple of takes before it was dark. We didn't use any lights. We had a practical on in the house, but that was it. It was just really about shooting at the right time of the day. God, I said, just reading that gives me anxiety shivers.
Oh, like, yeah.
To be able to get a shot that is that choreographed.
You have to watch the studio. There is an episode where that is like the whole thing they have to shoot at golden hour. And God. It's so funny. And it's like this whole thing.
To do a dolly tracked long take at golden hour, oh my God.
You have to watch it. This show will give you so much anxiety. Everybody needs to watch that show if you care anything about filmmaking or know it. It might be triggering just for you, but it's hilarious.
Another interesting IMDb tidbit, just rounding out production that otherwise I just couldn't find a place, so I put it in here. The abandoned house that Hugh hides out in. The floor plan of it is a 4-square, which was a style of architecture that was really popular in this place, in this part of the country from around, I think it was the late 1800s to mid-century. And the design of a 4-square, it was meant to have this kind of circular plot so that you could move starting in one room and circle through all of the rooms and come back to where you started without going down a hallway. And somebody on IMDb pointed out that if you're living in the world of It Follows, that would be kind of the most useful floor plan you could possibly have, because you can just keep looping around.
Like a little cartoon. Yeah. Like Looney Tunes, That'd be hilarious, right? To be fair.
I kind of want that scene.
That would actually be kind of, and they follow. They follow.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be funny if they had something like that. I would love that actually.
They're still
so stupid. Yeah, they're still following.
So those are all the production facts I have. There wasn't a whole lot of behind the scenes stuff, but now we're gonna move on into the release. We're gonna talk about the influence, and then we're gonna get to my film theory rant corner. Okay, so this debuted at the 2014 Cannes Festival, which we know happens in May, but then doesn't get its theatrical release until February 2015, which is, again, why you see the disjunct in when it's listed. Comes out first in France, then in the UK, and then only in America a month later in March. So there's kind of this interesting release strategy going on there, especially for a film that there's no, production company connection to France. They talk about the fact that they were nervous having Cannes be their first festival, feeling like they weren't on home turf. So it's interesting that they then choose to make that their release pattern. But anyway, do you have a guess at how much this made at the box office?
How long was it in the box office? In the US, or are we talking worldwide?
Worldwide.
I'm trying to think,
$1.3 million budget.
I feel like it did well.
It did.
Did it do 25 million?
You're so close.
Oh my God, I did it.
23.3. Look at that.
Oh my God, I was on it today.
That's so satisfying. Yeah. And it actually had the best limited opening for a film released in the US and Canada in 2015.
Whoa.
So
holy shit.
For indie features.
For that, man.
Exactly.
It really got people because it was so different.
I calculated it, and that means it made almost 18 times its budget back, which amazing. A big part of that was due to a last-minute call to hold on VOD distribution to give more time to the theatrical run, which, again, we've talked about this before, especially with horror, always give time for the theatrical run. However, there was a kind of interesting scheme involved in this pivot behind the scenes, and I have quotes from the person behind it on how that distro decision got made. So The reason that happens is because this guy, Tom Quinn, who at the time is working for Radius, which you see is one of the companies that distributed this, put a pin in Tom.
Okay.
He wins the filmmakers over and gets the distribution rights because he sets up a slate of potential distro strategies. He doesn't just give them one pitch. He's like, here's 5 different ways we could distro this film.
Wow.
We're going to go in with all 5 ready and then adjust our strategy based on how it's doing.
I never hear this, I feel like. Interesting.
This is why Tom Quinn has become a major player recently. Again, put a pin in him.
Yeah.
So they've got all these different strategies and they're ready to pivot based on how the film does. And they go into their opening with Quinn having booked just a 2-week limited run, followed by its VOD premiere. But when they see that it's doing well in theaters, Quinn has to pull the VOD release, keep it in theaters longer. Thing is, though, because Quinn had to book the VOD release dates 3 months in advance, he later says in an interview that he had to, quote, straight up lie to make this scheme work.
Oh my God, I love that.
Sneaky!
Oh my God, I love that he was just like ready to pounce.
Yeah.
Like he was prepared for it.
That's a good distributor.
Damn.
So, Tom knows what he's doing.
Yeah, no shit.
And note, part of the reason that they were planning on a quick VOD turnaround was that this film did really badly at test screenings, which just goes to show test screenings are oftentimes garbage.
Yeah.
I'm sure we all remember, because this is only a decade old, but this film was like immediately embraced by critics. It holds a fucking 95% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes. Although, interestingly, it only has a 66% from audiences, which is one of the bigger disparities that I've seen in that direction.
Critics,
and I think horror is a category where you see audience and critics diverge more from each other.
I know, they never agree.
They never agree. And I think a lot of that comes down to, like, horror audiences often go in, like, A, from a more forgiving place, but B, from a place that's much more scare-oriented. Where, like, is this horror film gonna scare me? As opposed to, like, is this a successfully constructed film?
I was going to say, because also, like, horror fans are going for horror, and we've consumed so much horror that we hold them up in a different light than, like,
We're
a
looking
film
for different
critic.
things.
Like, they're not looking at it the same way, so that makes sense. But still, never agree.
Yeah, never agree. So critics immediately start calling it, like, one of the best horror films in years, and they particularly praise the cinematography. They're talking about those 360-degree shots, which is very Carrie, and they're talking about the attitude it takes towards its material. I brought in a quote from David Rooney for The Hollywood Reporter, who says that it's, quote, a less gimmicky Final Destination.
Oh my God.
Like that.
Oh my God, that's so good. I mean, yeah, it's totally that. That's
funny. And I want the gimmicks.
Yeah, you want the gimmicks. Yeah. At least they knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing. Yeah.
That's so funny.
And praises its, quote, creepy, suspenseful, and sustained. A skillfully made lo-fi horror movie plays knowingly with genre tropes and yet never winks at the audience, giving a refreshing face value earnestness that makes it all the more gripping. And I do think that gets...
was a mouthful.
It's a mouthful. I do think that gets at a little bit of one part of why the film didn't work as well for me, particularly didn't work as well as Final Destination for me. Because again, these are both kind of these what-if concepts, and Final Destination takes itself so much less seriously that it felt like it was easier for me to relax into it, whereas this film feels like it takes itself really seriously, and also... maybe this is just my own bias showing, but I was just watching it and I was like, this director thinks he's so smart. And, like, I felt that from the film.
Okay. I'm wondering, if that's what, because his quotes, and you like to come from a sense of, like, I get where you're coming from with the director, with the vision, and, like, if he's not clear, he's almost like putting it on the audience to be like, and it's like, yeah, whatever, like, sure, but like not saying that.
Right.
I feel like if he were to say that, I'd almost feel better about him.
I would feel better about
like,
that.
You know what? Yeah.
It feels to me like he's being like, well,
Catering.
If you can't figure out what it's saying, that's up to you, but I mean something by it, but I'm just not going to tell you what.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just fucking decide. Or just say I'm not going to give interviews about it. Like, just make a fucking decision. Yeah. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not at Film Theory Rant Corner yet, but okay. I think that quote, however, as much as I disagree with it, gets at a lot of why this film gets the positive critical response it does, which is that, to me, this film marks a major turning point away from the kind of meta-horror commentary that starts with Scream and towards this much more A24 style earnest, quote unquote, elevated horror that we are getting a lot more of today.
Yeah.
That just, it takes itself much more seriously. And a lot of these movies still are responses to Golden Age horror, like the sex equals death trope that this is playing with. But I think you see much more of a sense of reverence towards the movies those tropes come from, rather than like the kind of loving ribbing that you get in Final Destination, which feels again much more like just like film nerds having a good time.
Right. Yeah. I kind of get to the point too, like even with the character that I just think he basically wants to boink her the whole time. He didn't give a fuck.
Oh,
He's like, I believe you. No, I don't.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
I can fuck you and help you, sure.
What do I have to say to get in those pants?
I almost
those
feel
pink
like
pants, because you're wearing pink in every scene.
Yeah. I almost feel like if that character, like to your point, like I'm not bothered by it. 'Cause again, I think everything, like it works for me, but just looking at it more critically, I could see almost if that character was taken out or amplified, they could have gone, there's where you could have shifted the tone a little bit.
This was the biggest thing.
Did you hate him?
It wasn't even that I hated him, it was that there were so many things that I felt like this movie just sets the table with so many interesting questions and then just ignores all of them.
Sure. Yeah,
and
I can see that for sure.
That his character was one that I very much felt like that could have been pushed in a more interesting direction.
Maybe because it sounds like the director didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh shit, people really like this.
Yeah.
I did not think this well.
Yeah, exactly.
I did not think this through.
I mean, again, this wasn't even the script that he wanted to be making for a second feature.
Yeah,
and
no,
there's a degree to which it feels like that to me,
Sure.
where it kind of feels like, oh, well, but this one got money, so I guess I'll make this.
Yeah. It wasn't. We talk about a lot of scripts being like passion projects and like love of horror, and I'm wondering if that's what you're feeling.
That's I think that's a lot of it. However, okay, Influence. This movie goes on to an extremely long afterlife just by the sheer number of pop culture references it's already generated. There's a Funny or Die parody. There's an Atlanta episode that's riffing off it. There's a Derek Landy novel called Desolation, which has a kind of crossover Stephen King's It versus It Follows thing. There's a lot of like Stephen King It Follows.
Yeah. I think I made that joke yesterday too, watching it.
And it's one of those films that kind of captures an idea or feeling in a way that it becomes a shorthand for it in other media, I think. And that's, you gotta admire it for that. Like, you can say it, like, oh, it's like an It Follows type of thing, and people will know what that means even if they haven't seen the movie. Let's talk about the remake called They Follow. Got announced in 2023. Supposed to film this fall. It's being produced by Neon. Micah Monroe is slated to come back. But if you're wondering how it ended up at Neon, now we get to take that pin out of Tom Quinn.
Oh.
Because Tom Quinn moved from Radius. He's now the CEO of Neon, which means he is the one who was kind of the mastermind behind the Anora Oscar campaign.
That's why that fucking thing got everywhere. That movie looks atrocious.
I have not watched it for reasons.
The critical reviews I've read about it are from like people from the sex working community, and I think the Oscars was a fucking joke this year.
It was a shit show.
It pisses me off on so many layers of the films that got
and it's also
nominated and won. It makes me so mad.
I have big feelings about Anora in particular because they tried to shoot it with a non-union crew, got their production flipped, even though they were shooting with $6 million, which, like, you should have the budget to hire a union crew at that point. Then Tom Quinn, CEO, goes on to spend $18 million marketing the film and doing the Oscar distro campaign, which, like, that's great, but where was that money to pay your employees? And then Sean Baker goes up on stage and is like, long live indie film. And I'm like, yeah, long live indie film for you, but you don't want to pay your crew? Like, okay. That's my Anora rant. I haven't seen the movie. I'm sure it's great. Yada, yada, yada.
I'm never going to watch it.
But point is,
that makes so much sense.
Tom Quinn, I think this is probably the movie that makes you see his marketing genius really take off. He's, whether you like him or not, he's clearly doing a really good job of taking these low-budget films and spinning them into enormous releases. So, Tom Quinn, now at Neon, he's the one who ran Radius, which handled distro for It Follows. So, different production company, but headed by the same person. And Quinn has actually been talking about wanting a sequel to It Follows since it came out theatrically in 2015. So he has been pushing for this for a decade. The tagline for They Follow is, "It's everywhere," which, like, okay. It sounds tentatively, like, the concept involves a kind of search for patient zero, which I have political misgivings about.
Ooh. Yeah.
This is where
Took
it
me
starts.
a second, but yep.
This is where it starts getting into my real problems with the film. It's like, I don't think any of this was intended to be as fucked up as I found it, but because so much, I think, wasn't fully thought through, there's a lot of implications behind the story that are real icky to me. Yeah. And I'm going to get into them in a second. I'm holding on to it. But, so... Micah Monroe gave an interview last summer talking about the script, which is already written. She said that it's, quote, bigger and darker and more fucked up. Great. But as far as I can tell, it still hasn't filmed yet, which is interesting because it was slated to shoot last year.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like it's been a rumor for fucking ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now they're saying that it was going to shoot, then summer in 2024, Micah said it was going to shoot in early 2025. Early 25 has come and gone, which tells me... something is going wrong with this production because it's already financed. All the people are attached. The script is written. It's been in talks forever. Why has this film not been made? Especially when Neon is doing great right now. It's not like they're running into trouble. They just had a film win an Oscar.
And I was going to say, this is like the type of film, like, I feel like it was ahead of its time in a certain way. Like, we have this new tone now. I feel like it kicked off that. So I feel like it's the perfect now film to make.
So, like, why has it not been shot yet?
Tuning.
Questions. I don't know, but I have feelings. Mitchell has been pretty open to the idea of a sequel from the beginning, and said around the time of the release of It Follows, a lot of people were asking him about it, and he said that, quote, there's some stuff that we chose to cut out because of the budget and the time, so there's all sorts of fun things that could be done with this concept and story. And then he jokes about calling the sequel It's Still Following.
Oh my god, that's kind of funny.
At least I'm like, okay, you had some humor.
Yeah. But now I'm wondering if there's going to be a multiple of them, not just one.
Right? If it's going to become a franchise? I hope not. I don't think this concept can... I don't think this concept in these hands can be sustained.
No.
Yeah. No. Anyway, but so if you want some insight into a potential plot point, though, he does in a contemporary interview around the release of It Follows mention one particular set piece that he cut and missed that I would be surprised if he doesn't bring back for the sequel now that he's got the budget too. Right. And he says, quote, there was a point in the very first draft where the friends think that they're okay and go to an outdoor concert, and they're literally in a huge crowd at this show. It was doing some interesting things with perspective and playing with that cold subjective camera and cueing the audience into certain things before the characters and letting that suspense build without walking you through the whole thing, and I'd have to read it to remember. It was a really cool scene, but it was way too hard to do on our budget. So I'm calling it now. That scene's gonna haunt him enough. It's coming back and They Follow.
Yeah, for sure.
If it ever gets made.
Yeah.
And at the time that It Follows came out, he also spoke about wanting to kind of move cautiously in his next steps creatively to preserve creative control, which is why I think you see him move on to do Under the Silver Lake next. Like, he's still doing indie auteur projects. He's not, and I'm sure he got offers to do bigger budget stuff.
Yeah.
So now, to tee us up for Film Theory Rant Corner, my Tarantino quote.
Because I forgot this was coming back.
Have never agreed more with something this man has said in my life.
This podcast is a journey of you and Tarantino
I know!
The same person. We'll have him on one day, yeah. You guys just rip off masks, and Tarantino's you, and you're Tarantino.
Oh my god.
We know special effects people.
I want to see him wearing this dress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You have to pick out his wardrobe for sure.
Okay, so he put this so well.
God, I'm afraid.
Quote, well, the first thing he says is that this is one of those movies that is so good it makes you mad at it for not being great. And I'm like, nailhead. Yeah.
Can I ask? Yeah. When and like in
when
what
was
context
this from? This is from like 2014. He I think posted on his Twitter being like, this is such a great concept. Why did it not succeed?
Okay.
And so he goes on to give his pitch for like, he talked about all the things that he had the biggest problems with and why.
Cool.
And I agree with all of them.
I love that, actually.
He says, the movie keeps on not holding to the rules that it set up. Like, okay, you can just shoot the bad guys in the head, but that only works for 10 seconds? Well, that doesn't make any fucking sense. What's up with that? And then all of a sudden these things are aggressive and they're picking up appliances and throwing them at people. Now they're strategizing, which like, yeah. So at the beginning, they don't need tools. And then at the end, when all of a sudden...
The shootings got me, actually.
Yeah.
Because that feels
So at the beginning,
Weird. Also,
she tries to shoot it and it doesn't work. And then you get to the pool and all of a sudden it does.
And also just if you were talking, oh man, you're really making me think about this damn film, Sienna.
The more you think about it, it just falls apart.
I still love it. So my mind is, but I'm a little bit more critical because even if it's a metaphor for like an ST, whatever you want, like that doesn't even make sense.
Right. So
you shouldn't be able to do anything. It should not be penetrated.
Or the rules should be consistent.
Yeah.
And also, if at the very ending of the movie it works by invisible man logic, where like it has a physical form that you can shoot.
Yeah, the blood splatters.
Yeah.
Well, she sees it.
And she throws the sheet on it.
Yeah.
But it takes you that long to figure that out. Nobody's ever been able to think of this in the entire time this has been chasing. And again, for a film, for the big final climax to just be invisible man rules, they did that in 34 better. Yeah. Like, get out of here.
You can't compare that. But no, you're not wrong, though. The rules kind of get a little wonky there.
And then he says, and that was like, there are films where I don't mind if there's not like a logical consistency because it doesn't feel like the film is trying to. What it frustrated me about this was that it felt like it was trying to create like a coherent narrative world in which the same rules are followed and just didn't succeed.
Right.
And here's another Tarantino quote.
I love this.
So funny. He said, his biggest problem, quote,
I know.
Why wouldn't it have been a good idea for her to fuck the guy before she went into the pool so at least two people could see the thing? It's not like she would have been tricking him into it. It's what I would have done.
Yeah.
And he goes,
I always wondered that too. About
Yep.
Or even like who to pass it on to, because like I'm like you wouldn't want to pass it on to just anyone, because then they don't have the rules explained. And so it's just gonna go right back to you, and you're not gonna even know.
This is the giant
film theory
gaping problem that I have with this film is like
it just doesn't make.
It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, it seems to come from the director.
Okay, so I called it Film Theory Rant Corner. Queer sex could have fixed this edition, because this movie. There's a lot of debate about, like, is this a sex-negative movie? Sure. And the director really hates that people are reading it that way. And I'm like, do you see the movie you made? But whatever.
Now I'm like, what was his intent?
I don't think he knew. I don't think he knew what his intent was.
Because, damn, that's what I thought it was. I guess that's the conversation.
Exactly. And he's joking about it. He's like, oh, yeah, you should definitely still have sex, but...
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't think you made a sex-negative movie? Like, what movie do you think you made? I don't think you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, it does get a lot of rave reviews from Catholic publications, which I think tells you something. If the Catholics are able to rave about your horror movie... That tells you something about how it's being read, whether that's your intention or not. Sure. That is the movie you made, is a movie that the Catholics love for its anti-sex message.
And even if you didn't agree with it, right, you should be able to at least have the discussion of like, yeah, it's art, and I absolutely I love that people do that. But that was the intent. But how fun? You know
here's
what I mean?
The thing: he tries.
Oh God, I don't think I like him.
He tries to explain why he isn't a fan of that interpretation. And has tried to pick it apart by pointing out that while sex is what endangers the main character, it's also what brings her safety. To which I say, but only at the expense of other characters.
Yeah. Bitch,
there's no logic to that
Where
statement.
does it bring her safety?
Yeah.
She doesn't look relieved a damn moment in that movie.
Not at all. Not at all. And so he goes on to say, quote, we're all here for a limited amount of time, and we can't escape our mortality. But love and sex are two ways in which we can, at least temporarily, push death away.
I find that such a weird concept.
That's not the film you made. That is not the film you made.
What a great concept. Yeah, you're right. That's
not the film you made.
I almost wish I didn't hear this man.
Well, and that's part of it. Like, if what you actually wanted was to make a film that has a complex attitude towards sex, I'm sorry, you need to have like at least one sex scene in it that feels tender and good and like.
Yeah, no, they don't make
all
it.
Of
it
the
is
sex
like
in this movie is terrible.
Let me boink you to get rid of this really quick.
Exactly.
With like, here's this bad thing,
and that's fine, but that's a sex negative movie. And if that's the movie you're trying to make, then commit to it and make that with every bone of your body. I'll disagree with it, but at least commit to the idea you're trying to get across.
Yeah, we didn't even see the one that would have been tender, which is the one that kicks off where she gets it.
Right?
We're in the car with her.
We're in the car with her very briefly, and we see her just like looking sad afterwards. Like it cuts out all of any moments that could be tender. We don't see her fuck Paul. We get it implied that she has, but we don't see that. And he also here's where it really falls apart for me, because he's said...
Oh, this is where?
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm sorry, you guys. I told you it fell off a cliff and then it kept falling.
Just now we got there. I love it so much.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm on board. I'm on a hater director train right now, to be fair. I love the movie.
This dude
but I think
doesn't know what he's talking
wrong.
about.
We should
has he seen his own
I
movie?
know.
Like, what are you doing, man?
Were you there?
Were you there? Were you there? Okay, so he says specifically that, because like a lot of people have asked him questions about the mechanics of this movie that he's not been able to answer, which like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. You can see why as you go into this, but one of the things he said is that he understands that like there are people who are like, well, why didn't Micah's character just have sex with more people? And he's like, that would be a different movie. It was really important to this movie and the way it's constructed that our main character be somebody who hears what happened and then doesn't immediately jump to, okay, well, let me just fuck a bunch of people to be safe. And like, okay, I get deciding that's the main character you want. Mm-hmm. However, that's the way everybody acts in this.
Right.
Let me begin to pick this apart for us. Because all of the decisions that all of the characters in this movie make feel to me not like decisions motivated by who they are, but by where the plot needs to go. And that kills me in a movie like this, because it's
got no bones at that point.
It's got no bones, and this is part of why to me Greek tragedy, or even something like Final Destination, which I know that's a weird combo to put together.
It really is.
But that's why that's so satisfying, is because the characters are doing everything in their power to fight back with everything they have against the creature, and the fight that these characters have is fucking weak and dumb. Like,
well, also like that, the lack of development of like her friend characters that just sit out. Yeah. I don't like that.
None
we
of
never
them are
see
people.
Them.
None of them feel like real people to me. And it would be so much more satisfying to me if we saw, like, again, this is a what if movie. What I want from a what if movie is something like what Final Destination does, where you have a series of characters who are each approaching this problem in a drastically different way. And instead what we have is a series of characters who approach the problem in basically the same way, which is even though sex is what's going to save me, I'm going to try to avoid it as much as I possibly can. And also, I'm going to make the dumbest decision I possibly can at every point in terms of how to kill the monster.
So we're saying the boyfriend in the beginning is actually the good guy in this for us.
I mean, he was the one whose actions made the most sense to me.
No, for sure. I mean, I'm sorry, I would do everything to
Absolutely.
get that. That's terrifying. And just like the stress, like you can't sleep.
I would be fucking everybody. Yeah. Like and I don't even think I'd feel guilty about it. Like at that point, like this is what you do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know. Same.
So basically it just kind of, as I said before, I feel like this movie sets a table full of questions and doesn't answer them. And so I was like, what are some of the questions this leaves me asking? What are some of the questions this left others asking? And I did some research. I found a hilarious article entitled "All the Questions I Feel Uncomfortable Asking About the Sex Rules of It Follows."
Oh my god, stop. I love that.
Brought in a couple questions from it. Got me thinking about my own questions.
Yeah.
Let me raise some of them.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Does someone have to come for it to be transmitted?
I know, I was wondering that too.
If so, both people or just one?
Right.
Because that has a very different meaning.
Yeah.
What happens with queer sex? Yeah. Does there have to be a guy ejaculating involved?
Right.
Does anybody have to come?
Yeah.
At what point in sex is it passed on?
I wondered that too.
But beyond that, once you get outside of the pure mechanics of it, this, again, feels very much in the same way that It Follows is, like a movie that's kind of playing out like a philosophy question. It's like a thought experiment. And in a thought experiment, I want to see things get taken to the logical extreme. That's what's interesting about a thought experiment,
I mean,
right?
If this guy had no intent on it being like anything to do with sex, that's why none of these are answered.
Then none of these questions get answered, and I'm left incredibly unsatisfied. But so, like, I'm left wondering, what happens if it's theoretically spread to everyone in the world? If every last virgin gets fucked and this gets passed on to them? Are we all safe, or are we all in danger? What happens if someone actively tries to spread it, not just to one person, but to as many people as possible? The way people thought Gaëtan Dugas was doing. If we want to talk about Patient Zero, if we want to talk about potential AIDS crisis metaphors, if you're making your next film about the idea of tracing it back to the source, you're bringing up moral questions about this that this movie refuses to engage with.
I also wonder if that's even like, is he going to shift his tone and go so hard into that and They Follow?
Right. Which, like, that's going to gross me out too.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about that now.
Is it gonna, are any people going to pull a Final Destination and become so cocky because they're not next in line that they think they have this almost superhuman immunity to death? Like, there are so many interesting things you could do with this. And instead, we get just like a whole bunch of carbon copies of Micah's character. Everybody acts like that same character.
Do. That's so funny. I know. I brought it up last night. It was the first time I noted the two girls in it. I was like, why are we not like?
Who are they?
Know.
They're not people.
Just the shell phone. People. That's what we have.
The shell phone is all we get of her character.
Yeah.
She's just there to quote Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
That's it. And then this was really unforgivable to me. As if the rest of it wasn't. But really, like, this just, like, hurt me. How does sex work play into this? Because this film gives us one fucking shot of Paul driving by these incredibly stereotypical sex workers on the street, which I also am just like, you've never seen a sex worker in your life if you think that's what sex workers look like. There's a whole rainbow of varieties of sex work experience, but, like, for that to be your idea, it's very just, like, straight white cis dude. And it just feels like such a cop-out to me to show Paul pulling past them and be like, oh, maybe sex work has some implications for this world. But I'm not going to dive into it. I'm just going to show you one shot 5 minutes before the end of the movie, because sex workers don't deserve any more narrative reality to them.
But again, I just think it goes right back to your point that, like, if you haven't, like, it didn't, it wasn't, that thought wasn't there to begin with. It wasn't thought out. So, like, to even ask those questions, I don't even think you can, because
I think that shot should have been taken out. I think just don't bring sex work up at all if you're not prepared to address it.
Or if it's, it was kind of a throwaway moment.
And all that does is come back to the idea of sex workers as the less dead. Like, the narrative is treating them that way. But it's not about that. It's not actually about sex at all. It's just using kind of sex.
Annoying the director was in this. Yeah. Because I didn't really like the film. I feel like, what a bummer.
I know. And finally, last question. What happens if someone gets raped?
I know.
Because this whole
guy was
movie,
not able to. This guy not.
He wasn't qualified to address it, but he's the one who set the table with this.
But consent.
Yeah.
That's
the thing is, to me, so much of this film hinges on a concept of consent and what consent is.
It would have been like, if he would have just taken that and really...
There's so much to run with there, particularly because there's consent and then there's informed consent. And we see when Micah's character has sex with what's-his-face at the beginning, Hugh, Jeff.
Yeah, I know. One of the men.
One of the men. It's presented as a consensual scene, but she doesn't know that this is getting passed on to her.
That's what I mean. I don't think it is consensual at all. It immediately starts that way.
It's not consensual.
The morality
of
that
doesn't examine that at all. And the fact that every single sexual act we see in this film is presented narratively as consensual, is treated as if the filmmaker is viewing it as consensual.
Right.
It feels to me like he's scared of where he can see his own metaphor leading him, which is like all of this film. He probably didn't want to piss off Hollywood men. Probably not.
I think that's what he probably wanted, like, why he played it safe.
And, like, it's dancing so much around imagery of sexual assault, particularly, like, a couple of questions. Why do we have one of the appearances of the entity be a woman who clearly has just had, like, some sort of an assault where her face has been hit really badly and she's walking towards you peeing? Like, you're drawing on sexual assault imagery there. You've got to admit that's what you're doing. Why, just on a plot level, does Micah's character need to be drugged and tied up to a chair when he could have easily just locked the car door and been like, okay, I need to tell you? The only reason to do that is to make it look more like a date rape analogy. Yeah. I can't think of a single narrative reason to do that.
Just the wrong guy for the wrong topic.
Wrong guy for the wrong topic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's so much you could dive into here that would be so interesting if it were the right person.
You got to do what Jeffrey Riddick did at 14 and write a prequel of your own and just bully them.
Oh my God.
You should write They Follow. Because those topics, like, you're right, like, there's
so much to dive into.
Again, I really enjoy it, but I did not realize that wasn't
the more you think about it, and the more you hear the director saying, like, oh, but it's not actually about sex. It's like, well, if it's not, then why did you use that?
Why do you even make this film?
Yeah.
Period. Like, why? You should have passed this on to someone had more love for and, like, compassion for that topic.
Exactly. Because, like, there is a version of this film that I would love so much that is shot the exact same way.
Yeah.
Just with an entirely different narrative.
Yeah.
No. it just basically this whole movie kind of, when you look at it through that lens, this whole film lives in a world that is where all sex across the board is straight, white, cis, free of sexual assaults.
Yeah.
And this straight, white, cis sexual world is being haunted and hunted by this unseen sexual force that's threatening that straight, white, blonde status quo. And I'm sorry, I just can't not see that as regressive. Yeah. Whether that was the filmmaker's intent or not, I don't think he thought it through well enough to avoid it feeling
But that's the thing that's equally as horrible.
Exactly. And so it
like,
just...
how could you not, as a filmmaker, not think about that?
Which, like, that was one of the other things that I was feeling watching this film that especially I thought about after what you were talking about with Final Destination. Is like, bitch, this takes place in Detroit and there's not a single character of color.
I know, they both had that. They were so white.
Yep.
Makes no fucking sense.
Which, like, I'm fine with that if that's a point. Like, if that is something that the movie is acknowledging, that's one thing. But, like... Again, this movie is set in Detroit.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not the world that your movie lives in. Or is it? Yeah. So, and I think part of the problem here is, like, this is a very one-to-one use of metaphor. It's, like, sex equals death is just this very straight one-to-one comparison that he's using in this film. And I think if what you want at the end of the day is for people to read it as something more complex than an STD metaphor and one that's actually really regressive as soon as you start picking it apart,
for sure,
then you need to complicate the metaphor.
Yeah, he really should. I'm like, knowing him now, or like pieces very, like, now I want to read some interviews of the shit he said. He should have just gone like meta shticky horror and not tried to be this interested. Like, but you think he was like, I'm a filmmaker?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it
I don't
feels
know what
like
I'm
it
doing.
takes itself so seriously, and it's like, this is really good.
Yeah,
this is really Gregory Crewdson, and I'm like, Gregory Crewdson has meaning behind those images. Fuck.
He probably like heard someone say something about the film. He's like, yeah, that's totally what I meant.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Yeah, it actually is an analogy for like the decay of American society.
This might be the first time that like I really do love this film, but now I'm wondering if I do. Now I'm wondering if I didn't think about it enough. I just thought it was fun.
Well, and like, if
it's so beautiful, though.
That's the thing. It's so gorgeous, and again, I would love the coffee table book.
I love how stressful it is, though, too.
I love the soundtrack. I think Mike is great.
So
there are so many individual pieces that work so well.
If you don't have, I mean, he's the leader, man.
Yeah.
Steering the ship.
The leader needs to know where that ship is going, even if it's not clear on screen. Even if you're trying to leave it ambiguous, you need to know.
Yeah.
If you're making this kind
just
of
like,
film.
kicked off wrong.
Yeah.
So why? This is like one of the first time we haven't liked the director.
Yeah.
We usually, at least at the very least, we kind of like what they were like going for.
Yeah.
They're like likable.
Or
even if they're assholes.
Yeah.
We can at least
kind of, at least their creative insights are useful.
Yeah.
Which I think also tells you something is usually when I bring in a director quote, it helps you understand the movie better.
Yeah.
And every single quote I read from this made the film make less sense.
Damn.
And that's a problem.
What else does he do? So he's doing They Follow.
They Follow. He did Under the Silver Lake. He has not made anything since that, which came out in 2018. Again, he's in post-production for another film right now. And there's that one with the terrible woodsy title that I talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
And They Follow. But I also think that tells you something, that he's not...
I mean, you think someone that did that would follow it up with a couple more things, like even with A24. You'd think they really could have capitalized on him and that. And they clearly, I mean, maybe
I've
for the
not
right reasons.
seen Under the Silver Lake. I've heard that there are things about it that are very interesting. I've heard that on the whole, it's generally regarded as less successful than It Follows. And so given how I felt about It Follows, I'm like, why would I go watch that now?
Yeah. Just watch a clip if you want to. Honestly, if you feel enticed, just watch one clip. Save yourself.
I mean, same cinematographer. I'm sure it's fucking gorgeous. I'm sure it would make a great coffee table book.
Yeah, that's so funny. Interesting. Well,
so that's why I hated It Follows.
I mean, I think those are all valid reasons, though.
That's my hope. I hope, and also I want to say all of that with respect to the work that everybody put into the film. As somebody who makes movies, I know how fucking hard it is to even just get it there. And this is a movie that I know has brought a lot of people a lot of joy, and I have admiration for that. And anybody who has a good experience with it, hold on to that good experience. Don't let me change it for you.
Changes a little bit.
This was mine.
But that's what we talk about on here too. Like, we talk about where the inspiration, like half of mine was talking about where the inspiration came from. I don't think all of it was great. But the real
it's a lot more solid.
But they cared, and
Yeah.
there was thought, and
Yeah.
there was love. And I think, you know, it always bums me out if we hear that the intent of this film that people do
Yeah.
love, and there was so much good to it. It is a bummer to hear that, like, oh man,
It
like
makes
this
me-
person kind of didn't care about it.
It makes me feel like at the end of the day, his intention was to shoot something pretty that looks like Gregory Crutzen. I'm like,
Sure.
you shot something
He
pretty
should
that
just
looks like
say that,
Gregory
though, yeah.
Crutzen. But yeah, then just say that, and don't try to make it seem like you're trying to draw this like very complex metaphor.
Or like the audience is like wrong.
Yeah.
Don't shame, like,
Yeah.
just be like, wow, that's amazing.
Right.
That wasn't my intent, but
Right.
cool.
I
Like,
also
you don't
think-
even have to like people's interpretation.
Right. That's people
But
are
how-
always going to feel different about your art than you
It's
do, and that's
art,
fine.
man.
But like,
God.
I do also think when you have like the vast majority of people responding to your movie being like, "Oh, it's an STD metaphor, right?" And you're like, "Oh, actually, no."
That
Maybe you need to think
throws
about
me.
like what
I need
how
to
your
rethink
movie's
about this.
being read.
I gotta
Like,
rethink about this movie now, being like, then what was he going for? But I think we've just, the answer is he didn't know.
He didn't know.
And I think it's a bummer in horror too, where I think, you know, we've shared so many like for the love of horror, and even they've fallen flat, right?
And that's
But it was for the love of it, and they
Right.
tried everything to make
And-
sure the audience felt that, and it doesn't seem like he necessarily cared.
yeah.
It felt
I
like
don't
a
think he
cheap-
did.
He feels like a little, again, I still love the movie,
Mhm.
but he feels like a little infiltrator of
Yes.
like, well, I got into horror because it was easy.
Yeah, because I knew I could make
Get
money
out of
doing
here.
it. Yeah,
Sienna sniffed
we're
you
here
out.
for the
Sienna
love.
sniffed you out, man.
And like, sure,
So.
he can say all he wants that he loves movies like Halloween, but it still feels to me like the way this
I'm
movie
like,
is
does he though?
constructed.
Now I don't even trust him.
Yeah,
He seems
it
like a
feels to me
gaslighter.
like he
I
thinks
don't
that
know
he's
this man.
smarter than all of these movies that he's
Yeah.
drawing from. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to read interviews with him. I'm very interested. I might hate it, but I'm very interested to hear more about him.
He's quite a dude.
Yeah, I wish
Quite
you'll
a
have to tell me
guy.
some more off mic.
Oh, so that's what I got. Thank you for listening through my rant. Thank you
Yeah.
for sitting here with me. I'm so fired up now. This is this was the lowest rating that I've given a movie that I've covered on the
A zero?
podcast.
Did you give it
I,
a 0.5 like Roger Ebert?
I
Just
gave
to,
it
like,
a 2.5 stars, and I said
because of everything else. Was
yeah,
so,
I said those 2.5 stars are purely for the cinematography.
It's pretty great.
Yeah,
It's pretty great.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
That
what
makes
I
sense.
got.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
We're doing a lot
yeah.
of films. We're not going to love everything.
We're not gonna love
I
it.
forget which ones I've hated on here. I can't remember.
I remember there was at least one.
Yeah, there was one that
There
I
was
really
one.
didn't like.
Yeah.
Oh, The Strangers.
That's what it was.
Hate
yeah.
that movie.
We both hated that, which was
Yeah, that
really
was
fun.
awful.
It was really fun. Yeah,
For
it was
me
fun to pick it
personally,
apart.
my
Yeah.
opinion. I think we're gonna like the ones we're going into.
I think
for
we're
next
gonna like
week.
our next pairing
Do we
as
have
well.
any shout outs for the cinema or anything? coming up? End of
Only
May?
if we want to announce the one that we're going to be screening for my birthday, but I don't
Yeah,
know
we'll
if
hold
tickets
that.
are up
Hold that
yet.
for a
Yeah, so
second.
we'll hold that for
Yeah.
now. Yeah, so no announcements right now, except what we're talking about next time.
I know, I'm like weirdly nervous about it. I don't know why.
I'm
excited
really
'cause we finally get to talk about 'em, but-
Yeah, well, it's two greats that I haven't seen again, which I love when that
Okay, I
happens.
forget you haven't seen yours.
Yeah, so I'm covering the 1979 Alien, the Ridley Scott OG. I've seen Aliens, but I've not seen Alien.
You're gonna
So
love Alien.
I can tell I'm going. It's one that I've been saving like for a rainy day
Your
type
gay
of
little heart's gonna be
situation.
beating out of your chest
Oh,
for Ripley in this
Well,
one.
and
This
her-
one specifically.
And Jonesy, like
yeah.
as a cat dad.
It's pretty great.
Yeah,
Yeah, the ensemble of that.
I'm so
yeah, it's
stoked.
just
yeah.
yeah. I hated on it at first, which is so funny.
Oh, funny.
I was like, I felt like I was beat over the head with Sigourney Weaver. Like she was like everywhere and everything, and it started to piss me off. Like when I found out she was in Cabin in the Woods at the end, like she's like the voice or whatever.
Yeah.
I like wanted to like die.
That
Was like at the time where I was like so over her.
You were in your
Except
Sigourney
for in Holes.
Weaver hatred phase.
I was for no reason. I was just being a hater, and I like want to hit myself about it.
She's a lesbian icon.
But I know. I was wrong, everyone. I was severely wrong.
It's okay. We're all
Shame,
allowed to
shame.
be wrong.
But I have since had so much appreciation for Alien, so I'm excited to revisit it.
I'm very stoked.
And then I'm talking about Jordan Peele.
yes, finally.
I'm doing Nope.
Yes,
Which I love.
So
I'm
psyched.
so excited for you to watch that. I know there's some good like practical effects behind the scenes stuff.
Bet.
I'm probably not going to tell anyone because I feel like when Nope, like his movies, they're so analyzed.
Yeah.
He talks about them so much. So I don't think I'm going to share any new information. I'm just very excited for you to
And
watch it.
I've kept myself pretty, like I know a couple of things about it. I've not watched like a trailer for it even. So I've tried to keep myself as fresh as
nice.
possible. Like I know there's a lot of stuff about early film history, and I'm really excited for that.
Yeah.
I know there's stuff about a monkey, and I know there's stuff about Alien.
Yeah, there's a lot of
that's all I've
real
got.
world things in this, and it's a very interesting take on a an alien story. It's very complex, very complex, very filmy. I think you're very much gonna get all the references and like all of the things. Keke Palmer,
yes,
God,
and it just feels like such a good kickoff to summer too.
It is.
Yeah.
You're gonna be afraid of every cloud you see.
Love.
On that note,
Yeah.
are we ending? Are we done?
I think we're done.
You guys, thanks for listening, by the way.
Yeah,
I
if y'all
feel like
didn't turn off in the midst of me ranting about why
like, and then I was struggling on a whole different level for mine. So like, if you made it to here,
we're proud
bless
of you.
you.
We love you.
May your pillow always be cold. I don't know what else people say. May there never be gum on your shoe. I don't know.
Or in your hair.
Or in your hair. Or anywhere else. Thanks, Warren, for hanging in there. You were coughing over there a little bit, so bless you. Travs.
Thank you for recommending this movie.
Travs
Even
hanging
if
in there
I
too.
didn't enjoy it, I really enjoyed pulling it apart.
Yeah, it was
I'm really glad
good
you
pairing.
recommended it.
I liked it. Thanks, Trav, for hanging in there too. He's suffering today. And then Theo Schaefer.
Yeah, for playing us
Man,
out.
thanks for vibing wherever you are.
Yeah.
See you on another time. We gotta get out of here.
We
Help.
do.
Until then, thanks for listening to Splice Splatter.
The film podcast presented by the Jean Cocteau Cinema in Santa Fe, New Mexico at Classic Horror.
Smaller gore.